Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
We're up. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome aboard. Thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You made two of my all-time favorite movies.
Right.
The Watchmen, which I
Okay.
fucking love,
Okay,
and
awesome.
300.
Okay, awesome.
Those are if I have like a top 20 list. I've never like formally put together a top 20 list, but those are in there.
Oh, that's
for
cool.
sure.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that because, 300 was a complete labor of love and an insane. 300 was. I was a Frank Miller fan for a long time, right? And I thought I would do another. I thought I would do Dark Knight Returns. Frankly, that was the movie I wanted. I still want to do it. I always tell everyone, like, Dark Knight Returns. If I could do Dark Knight Returns, I'd be done with comic book movies.
Really?
Well, because like, if you've done Watchmen, oh, sorry, I'm banging the mic. If you do Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, like for me, you're good. Your legacy is set. So, like, Batman versus Superman, literally steals a lot of Dark Knight Returns. I'm not gonna say it didn't. It did, but it's still not Dark Knight Returns. So I think that's still out there. But I always, for a long time, I had 300 like on my coffee table at my house when I was making TV commercials, and I'd have my friends over. I'd be like, I'm going to make this one day. It's going to look exactly like this comic book. And they'd be like, yeah, you're sure it is. And I was having a general meeting with Gianni Nunari, who was one of the producers, and he was asking me about what I like. And he had that graphic novel in his office, like on his table. And I went, well, okay, you know what? If I could do anything, that book right there, I would make that. And he goes, well, what do you mean? How would you make it? And I literally just opened it up and I go, we'd film this. We'd film these pictures. It would look like this. And he goes, okay, that's cool. Like, so you're saying you would just shoot the movie and it would look like this graphic novel. I go, that's what I'm saying. And I think, and that's what, but at the time we couldn't sell it. We tried, we went around town with it. We tried to, we went to all the studios. They were all kind of like, yeah, sword and sandals. Yeah.
Wasn't it the same time that Troy was being made?
It was exactly the same time as Troy. And when we went to Warner Brothers originally with it, they literally were like, we have Troy. So why would we want this? We have Brad Pitt. Like, literally Brad Pitt is in our movie. I go, we're going to do something crazy. We're not even going to shoot it outside. And they were like, what? Okay, you're nuts. And I go, yeah, we're not going to go for one shot outside. We ended up going for one shot outside for this, when the Persian messengers are coming, that super high-speed shot where the horses are kind of coming over the hill. We shot that outside because we just couldn't get the horses going fast enough. It's the shot right before this, I think. Oh, no, it's this one. That's it. It's that shot. So that shot was the horses. That was a high-speed shot we did with Photosonics outside. But that was it. That's like the only shot outside. Everything else is on stage.
Because
we couldn't get the horses fast enough inside, yeah. And it was too expensive. That was a low-budget movie, and we couldn't get...
300 was a low-budget movie?
Yeah, because we shot it all on stage, 60 days. Like, that's like why there's no director's cut of 300 is because... every frame of film we shot is in the...
You shot that movie in 60 days?
60 days, yeah.
Wow.
It was crazy, yeah.
That's insane.
It almost killed us, but it was fun. But yeah, so when we took it to Warner Brothers, they were like, finally, well, what happened was I did Dawn of the Dead, and then from Dawn of the Dead, I was supposed to do I Am Legend, right? And I Am Legend was this movie that was at Warner Brothers that they were like, what do you think? And then there was some kind of crazy mix-up, and they ended up giving that movie to someone else. And then I think they felt bad or whatever, and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I really still want to do 300. And so we shot that test shot. I think it's on the DVD. There's a test shot we did, and they said, okay, if you can make the movie look like that, go do it.
Was that one of the first movies that was ever shot in front of a green screen? Like, basically most of the movie except that one scene?
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think it was like, look, green screen photography was like a well-known way to make a movie, visual effects and all that.
The whole movie?
Yeah, I don't know about a whole movie. Yeah, that was weird. I always say, like, they go like, well, what innovations? Like, what? And I always go like, it's basically the same technology that the weatherman uses, like when he stands in front of the green screen and says like, "Oh, the front's coming in from the north." It's literally the same. It's literally the same technology, as because look, that easily you could put like the weather behind that guy right there and it'd be the same. That's Eli. That's my son.
Oh, wow.
He's now making movies. He was the second unit director on Rebel Moon.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, he also plays the young Rorschach in
Watchmen?
In Watchmen,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
like the baby Rorschach, yeah. Because like you put your kid in a movie, and I always was like, oh, let's have Eli do that because it's easier, like he has to like beat the other kid up. Just Eli's better because like I don't have to talk to like some other because like actually there's a scene in Watchmen where he bites the kid's face and he pulls the flesh off the face, and I go, you know what? Let's just get E to do it because then I could just be like, okay, E, bite this. Now pull it, like rip it off.
Right.
The only troubling part of that is that there was a scene that we did in that movie where because Rorschach's mom was a prostitute, right? So there's that scene where Rorschach's mom in the flashbacks like, I should have had that abortion, right? And she slaps him in the face, right? Because he hears, Mom, is he hurting you? Like, because she's having sex with some John in there. And then she opens the door and she's like, he's like, is he hurting you? I should have had that abortion, slapped him. And I had wanted the mother to be topless in that scene. And they were like, nah, like you can't have. And it's cool because his mother was visiting set that day and his mom was there and she was like, oh, you're putting our son in a movie. Like we weren't together at the time, his mom and I, but we're really close friends. But like she was an actress and I said, and they went, the only way that the woman could be topless is if it was actually his mom. And I was like, oh, I go, Denise. And she was like, no chance.
Imagine asking your ex-wife to play a terrible prostitute who slaps their son and says, I wish I had an abortion. Holy shit.
I go, come on, it's for the drama. It's not like,
oh my God.
I know. And she was like, you were insane. And I was like, come on, it would have been awesome.
It's at least slightly insane.
Yeah, a little bit.
But that would be the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Could you
There's a
CGI
loophole.
boobs on her?
Yeah, that's cool. At the time, probably. Now I think we could. Now I think we could have. Yeah, I think we could have. If I'd wanted to do it now, I think that's how you would do it. You do it like with like some sort of chest rig, and they would paint them out and then redo the boobs. That's a good idea, actually.
How much?
I'll go back in.
How much of any CGI was used on their bodies in 300?
Zero CGI on the body.
Really?
Really zero. We didn't have the money, honestly.
So many people talk so much shit.
I swear to God. I'm like, you need Mark Twight on this show, and then Mark will tell you, Mark trained the guys. Mark's like this amazing. He's like, I've known Mark for years, and he's an incredible alpine climber. He's like this. He's just like this insane. He can shoot. He can do anything that anyone can do. And like when I asked him to train the guys, he's like, this sounds like Hollywood bullshit. Like train actors for a movie. Like they're all fakers. They're all liars. And I was like, look, you will make them honest. And so he's like, all right. So he started training everybody. Yeah, there's Mark right there. And his gym was called Jim Jones, right? Like just as an example of like how hard he is. But yeah. And so like, he had trained all these SEALs, and basically it was basically the same thing that he was doing with the SEALs. He did with these actors, and
so a prerequisite had
you
to be.
can imagine
you had to be in some form of
you had
shape.
to be in some shape, teeny bit of shape. A couple guys came to us that were pure actors, but 90% had some shape.
How much time did you have to work with them?
I'm trying to remember. Normally, what I like is at least 5 weeks. I like 5 weeks, and I'll take more if you'll give it to me.
Sure, for a film, but I mean to prepare physically.
Yeah, I'm talking about before the film starts. 2 months or 3 months, I like before the film starts of training.
That's enough time to get them into that
kind
of 300 shape?
It never is. These guys trained doubly as hard, and they knew a lot of them were athletes anyway, so they came in with and Jerry had more time. And Jerry trained with his own guy. Jerry didn't train with Mark. But so, it depends. When Henry Cavill, Mark trained Henry for Superman, and that was a real that was longer. I think that was 3 months or 4 months. But yeah, it's never enough time because you just can't get it. And
Right.
Like actors, they just ideally, you'd have half a year. 6 months would be perfect, really.
At least.
Yeah. I mean, just to get you, visibly, I always say the one thing about movies is that, and the thing about Mark that I love was that he went to psychological war with the actors in the best possible way. What he was looking for, he would always say, I'm going to put you in your pain cave and you're going to find out a lot about yourself when you're in there, right? And then when you come out of the workout, you're going to grow. I'm going to grow you here. And some people just don't. They don't like that, especially people who haven't fitness isn't like a lifestyle that they've chosen,
No, that's a journey that you have to be really dedicated to go down. If you're just a kind of a casual and someone comes along and says, I want to put you in the pain cave, you're like, I'm not interested in that.
I think it works with actors because he makes it part of the crucible of the performance, and I think if you can connect it to the performance, it makes the training mean something. I've always been like a sort of bodybuilding fan. Like in the 80s, I trained with this guy in the 80s who was just like a teacher that lived, this guy Jim Arden, who lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I grew up. He was a teacher at this school called Greenwich Country Day, which was near the boarding school that I went to. And I was like, everyone expected me to be like, I played soccer. I was like an athlete. But then I sort of got into like weight training. I was like, that's what I want to do. Everyone thought I was insane. But and I think it was my meeting Jim and Jim being like, because Jim had this in the basement of Greenwich Country Day, there was like this weirdo Jim and Chris Dickerson and Mike Katz, all these like crazy 80s bodybuilders would show up and train with him. And it was like this weird, I'd be like, this is awesome. And we went to the Olympia, he took us to the Olympia in New York City. I don't know what year was that, 82 or 3, I forget what year. But anyway, it was just really cool. And I was just in this. And then, of course, I was Schwarzenegger. I read his book, Education of a Bodybuilder. It's a weirdo book.
Did you get involved in bodybuilding yourself?
I mean, I trained with Jim because I thought okay, yeah, maybe I'll be a bodybuilder one day. That'd be cool. But of course, I was also painting. And I remember when I was a senior in high school, after I graduated, I went to London for a year to art school to paint, and I lost 40 pounds of muscle in that year. Just literally, I was in the best shape of my life. Went to England to be a painter, and literally just ate baked beans on toast for a year, and starved to death.
Wow!
But I was like, this is amazing. I'm an artist. But it was definitely put a. But I always had that aesthetic. Bug in my head. And now I have, my trainer now is this guy, Alessandro. He trained everyone for Rebel Moon. And he's in his early 60s, Italian, was a bodybuilder, was a power lifter, became a bodybuilder. And he's he's just like this, he's a hard Italian, no bullshit. It was cool because during the training for Rebel Moon, one of the actors was like, I have an idea for a workout. Do you want to hear it? He's like, I have an idea for a movie.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah, exactly. He's or the guys at the gym, because he used to judge bodybuilding competitions, and has his pro card and everything, was a real bodybuilder, and they'd say hey, can you come and look at me? I have a contest coming up in the bathroom. And they go in there, and the guy'd take his shirt off, and he'd be like, how long till the competition? I'm like, you could be like, I got 2 months till the competition. And Alessandro would be like, I think next year for you is going to be better.
Wow.
It's and he has no problem saying, I think I need to lose 40 pounds, more like 80.
Jesus.
He's hard, but he's awesome. He's no bullshit. He's hilarious. I think he's, and he trained the guys for Rebel Moon, and he's a pure aesthetic. Mm-hmm. Trainer,
right.
Pure aesthetic,
he's just going for a look.
He's seen everything, and he just okay, your abs could be sharper.
Yeah, that's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing. It's
Yeah.
like just like
It is a whole
like
thing.
a whole thing. Yeah.
I had Ronnie Coleman on.
Oh yeah,
And
exactly.
Ronnie Coleman at one point in time was the freak of all freaks.
Oh, he is
Yeah.
hands down. Like no one's ever going to be better. Like
He's the freak of all freaks.
Yeah, like just like the way his muscles attach
Yeah.
is like crazy. Like you can't.
Well, he was probably one of the strongest bodybuilders ever.
Unbelievably
And
strong.
that's part of the reason why he looked the way he looked. He didn't look just big. He looked super powerful. Just
Well,
like
also the thing about Ronnie
preposterously
Coleman, like
powerful.
you see like guys that are just incredibly swole, where they can't, like they're muscle bound, like they can't,
Mm-hmm.
and he could like always just like touch his like back of his head.
Look
Just
at him back in his prime,
unbelievable,
dude. Look at that
unbelievable.
picture. That is
Yeah.
so insane.
Yeah, Alessandro was in a competition with him, Night of the Champions, I think, in San Francisco, and he said he goes, I come from Italy, I'm in my first competition. I like pull a card and I'm like realize like I'm next to Ronnie Coleman and me. He's like, great, this is fucking perfect. And he goes like the guy, like how bodybuilders, like the whole thing is about your skin being super thin, so everything like shows.
Yeah.
He goes I saw him backstage. And I thought, you know what? The skin's like not there. It's not going to happen. He goes, but then he like so much muscle. He like pulls and it's just like, he's like, oh my God, like how is it possible that the skin just can't, the muscle's so thick, it just like pushes all
It stretches all
you
the
see
skin
all the
out.
striations and everything that
Yeah.
you did. With him just relaxing, like backstage, you thought, I'm more ripped than him. But then he's like, no way.
It's such a weird sport because they're literally on death's door.
Oh, literally.
They
literally.
dehydrate themselves to the point where they have kidney failure almost.
Yeah. The thing that we can all learn from the bodybuilders is, like, I think that just now in sort of everything that's happening, like with longevity and like all this, like the bodybuilders will do stuff to their bodies that nobody else would dare do. They'll do dosages that no one will do. And so like, it's cool to say like, okay, if you want to know what quadruple the dose of anything does,
Right.
just ask those guys. They'll tell you. Because I think like you'd be like, okay, this is the most you could take, and then it's toxic. Oh, cool. I'll take triple that and see what happens. Because they're all searching for like the magic bullet.
It's kind of amazing how few of them have died.
Well, and also they do die all the time, so it's not.
They do
it's
die,
not-
but
they
it's
do.
not like you'd expect it kills all
you
of them.
think every single one of them.
Like Dorian
how
Yates
can
is
you
in
be
great shape.
Yeah, and how can you have been on the edge of it for so long?
Yeah, how could you be? Yeah, well,
The body's incredible. That's what you learn.
He's really suffered, unfortunately, Ronnie, but I think
Oh,
he
yeah, Ronnie
suffered
has.
from surgery.
Yeah.
I think the surgery got him. There's so many guys who get back surgery, and back then stem cells weren't available, and people weren't aware that there's other ways to fix your back. The doctors just want to go in there and start fusing discs, and it scares the shit out of me, man.
Yeah.
Everybody that I know that's had that done has had real problems afterwards. It puts extra pressure on the above and below discs as well, because it's an unnatural sort of unit now. Instead of having three pieces, you now have one.
Sure.
No,
it's crazy.
It can be a real problem. It can be a real problem.
Yeah, and I think that healing, the science behind healing is, it's changing so much.
Leaps and bounds.
And I think
Yeah.
that's where the future is. In my opinion, like how we learn to heal is really how we learn to like really stay, active and like getting stuff done for longer. Because recovery is the whole thing.
100%. Recovery is and also being cognizant of what your little issues are and not letting them get chronic. When I was young, I was just too much of a meathead.
No,
I would just
ignore
work
it.
through pain. And also, when you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're always in pain. So I was just work through the pain. But then I started developing some like real chronic problems. And it wasn't until I started doing stem cells and then starting to understand like you can, but it's not wise to just go and only do jiu-jitsu. You should be doing maintenance weightlifting that's designed to strengthen your joints. And so I really
100%.
started doing that, and that made a giant difference too. And instead of just thinking of it as a workout, it's always like, okay, is your car ready to get on the track? No, it's not. You need to change your tires. No, it's not. Your suspension's off. No,
Sure.
it's not. You need more gas. Whatever the fuck it is.
Sure, absolutely.
Treat your body like that. Don't just say, I'm fucking tough. I'm going to show up with the flu, and I'm going to go 7 rounds. No, don't do that. That's stupid. Every time I've ever done that, it's set me way back. It's never helped me. Never one time that I was like, push through the pain has it ever been good. Not a single fucking time. So now at 56, now I'm smart enough to go, okay, don't do chin-ups. You're getting tendinitis in your left elbow. Stop. You know where this goes. It's right here. You get it at the same spot every time.
Every time.
Let's start doing some wrist curls. Let's work
Yeah.
the legs. Let's do a bunch of other shit.
Yeah.
Let's do heavy bag rounds. Stop doing
You
the
can do
chin-ups.
a pull down too, by the way. It's fine.
Yeah, there's different stuff you could do that doesn't pull on that very specific tendon, but overuse injuries, those kind of things. So when you're doing a film like 300 and you're getting these guys prepped for this, are you telling them what to eat? Do you have a
I mean,
nutritionist?
It's awesome. If I ever put you in a movie, the cool thing is you show up, you work out, they hand you food, they like massage you. It's like the greatest.
Oh, that's great.
It's
so you
the
treat them
greatest-
like pro athletes.
Yeah, like pro athletes.
Oh,
You're
that's
just a
awesome.
pro athlete, and you're like in training camp.
Dude, I just watched 300 again this summer because my family and I went to Greece.
Oh, cool.
And so let's watch 300.
Yeah.
And my 13-year-old had never seen Greek 300 before. And she was like, holy shit. I was like, yeah, that's a fucking movie.
We were just in Greece this summer too, and it was cool because we were like in Athens and we were walking up this Parthenon, and I noticed like all the gift shops, they have like Spartan shit in them around.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I said to the guide, I'm sorry about that. And she goes, what are you talking about? And I go, I apologize for all this Spartan stuff in here. And she goes, yeah, it's that fucking movie 300. And I
Did she know that you made it?
No. And I go, yeah, that's why I said I'm sorry. I made that movie. And she goes, what do you mean you made it? And I was like, yeah, I
That's my movie.
that's my movie. And she goes, no. And I go, yeah. And then she was like, that's awesome.
Now she likes you.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's
it was
funny.
a cool swing, but it was.
Well, it's a fucking awesome movie.
That's
man.
cool.
If you don't
I
like
appreciate
300, you can go eat shit. If anybody who didn't enjoy that, what do you hate? Fun? Do you hate?
Well, the thing is, like, also, I met a lot of SEALs, a lot of like first responders, as you can imagine. Really, really. I've seen a lot of Spartan tattoos.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that. And I'm proud that that they find some sort of like inspiration.
Dude, Leonidas
from that,
is
yeah.
what every man wants to be.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
He was perfect.
He knew where, like, look, he knew where he knew who to look to.
Yeah.
To find out whether to burn the whole thing down.
Yeah.
And she gave him the okay. And
It was also the movie was brutally representative of both. It was both like mythical and beautiful and magical, but also very tied into the ethics of the Spartans and how absolutely brutal their world was and how they just accepted things in a way that just like, wow.
yeah, that's the thing that people are always like, with me, I mean, they ask me like, what about the morality of the movie? What do you think of it? And I go like, Sparta is also another planet. Like
Yeah.
if you, like we would not make it.
Right,
Like
right.
to say like, oh yeah, I'm cool. Like with the Spartans, I mean, they would have chucked me off the cliff like day one. It's not like
It's hard
it's
for
a
us
cool thing to imagine. Like
Yeah.
you want to like say, yeah, I'm with the Spartans in this, but like, they were brutal people. Like
From the
they were a
jump.
tool. They were a
Yes.
tool.
Yes.
Like we have democracy maybe because they existed, but they weren't necessarily democratic. They didn't. There was no
Right.
voting on whether or not we would like go in and die. Like that was just like what they wanted. That was in their like
this-
in their basic genetic makeup or in their philosophical makeup was like, okay, a beautiful death. If I can get one of those, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. And I won't give it to you. You got to take it.
Right.
But yeah, that's I love that like Fassbender when he's like looking down and he says that whole thing about like, what's awesome is that with all the world's armies, there's got to be one guy down that fucking place that can kill me and do it right.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you serious? Like that's what's turning you on? You're excited about the fact that the guy that kills me might be down there? Like that's
But it's also, I think, when we look at things like that and we put ourselves in the mindset of someone who lived so many years ago like that, there's this understanding that human beings are capable of fitting into a bunch of different bizarre groups. bunch of different strange cultures can rise. And when you have a particularly barbaric time in history, and you have this group of people in Athens that are literally changing the world through democracy and through the Eleusinian mysteries and all the shit that they were doing, where people are traveling from all over the globe to come to this one spot. And then you got these fucking savages. These people are the savages of savages, the Spartans.
Yeah.
They're like, if you think about it, if someone says, like, what kind of a warrior would you want to be?
Right.
If you're a little kid, I want to be a Spartan.
Yeah, of course. That's
like
why
they
all
were the
these
craziest.
sports teams have Spartans as their like mascots. You know?
Yeah, and to imagine that there was a group of people that existed, a culture that existed that was completely warlike and had these tenets that were just unbendable.
Yeah.
And from the time you were a child, they tested you.
Yeah, that's it.
And if you fucked up, if you failed, if you fell apart, if you quit, you were chucked out.
Yeah, the Cryptea, like they you know, the whole thing, like where they would send you like around 7, you'd go on the Agoge, you'd go like into the wilderness, and you're basically living among other kids that were between like 7 and 13, and you just were like wild. And the sort of elite of those groups were called the Cryptea, and the Cryptea would come down and just kill Helots whenever they wanted. Like they were encouraged. The Helots were the slave class that the Spartans sort of that maintained Spartan society. And these guys, these kids, imagine like if you lived, you know, and like in the hills, you knew there was just like this 13-year-old gang of 13-year-olds that were going to just come down and murder you at any moment.
And they were encouraged to murder
And they were
you.
encouraged to do it because they like, and also the Helots were fine. If the Helots killed them, that was fine because that meant that they weren't good enough anyway. And then they would have this like, they did this ritual with this like table of cheese where like all these Spartan warriors would stand around the table, and all the 13-year-olds who were ready to like transition into becoming true Spartans, you'd have to like try and get and pull a piece of cheese off this stone table, and the Spartan warriors who guarded the table could do anything to stop you. And it was just like just beating the crap out of these 13-year-olds, and finally, like, you know, if you got it, then you were given to a Spartan soldier who raised you, and basically the idea was that he was your lover, he was your teacher, he was everything to you, because the Spartans believed that, you know, really they believed that you would die for your brother if you were also lovers. You know, they thought that like if you were confused about why we're fighting, fight for that guy who's not only your best buddy, but like there's like a story, I guess, where they were like, when the Persians first came, they sent a scout over, and they looked down at the Spartans right the night before the big battle, and he went back and he goes, they were all like having sex with each other. It was like a weird, like they're like, we're going to be good. And there was this, one of the Spartans kings the old Spartan king was now working with the Persians and said like, oh no, we're fucked. They're saying goodbye to each other. Do you know what that means? Like we're completely screwed. Like they're gonna. Like we're gonna get murdered tomorrow, you know. Like and they were like, "You're nuts. You don't know what you're talking about." Like they're a bunch of softies. Like let's go get them.
What if that's the key to being the absolute greatest armor? You have to be gay.
Yeah,
you have to be gay.
Well, there's precedent, so I don't know.
There is precedent.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like imagine if that was applied today.
Yeah, it could be amazing.
Yeah, but that would be a real problem.
We'll see.
The family structure.
We'll see what they say. Yeah. Well, by the way, in the end, the Spartans had a real problem because they couldn't. There's this really crazy thing, like where on their wedding night, they would have to shave the head of your bride and dress her like a man, and she would fight you because there was no.
That was the only way they got hard.
That's the only way they could get it. Yeah, get her aroused because like they needed like unless they got like a bloody lip, you know, they were like it wasn't going to happen.
That's so insane.
Isn't that crazy?
That's so insane.
So like you can imagine that it was hard to like keep generate enough offspring, you know, with that. Like you had an awesome army.
Right.
They were fucking the best, but like you're as far as your procreation was going, it wasn't
God,
awesome.
Imagine being a woman back then too.
Well, they had to run the whole show because basically the guys were just training. So all the commerce and like the deals they were making to like, you know, okay, we're going to make a trade deal with this. That was all done by the women because like the guys were like, no, we got to fucking work out. It's kind of awesome in some ways.
It's kind of awesome, but it's kind of crazy. And it's kind of crazy that it requires you to be gay to be the greatest army because that's the one element. How much do you love this person beside you?
Yeah, you got to love them with everything.
Yeah.
You gotta
I mean,
love 'em with
imagine the
everything.
difference between you being with some random stranger on the street and a bunch of thugs attack the random stranger. How you would treat it versus if they attack your
loved one.
wife.
Yeah. You'd
Yeah.
do anything. You'd fight.
It's different.
It's totally different. I did that in Rebel Moon. There's a bit where I put that. There's a part where Sophia's character says, like, that they basically say they encouraged me to find a lover in the military academy because when the politics of war became too abstract, like, okay, take that beach or like climb that mountain. A lot of times, soldiers like, what? Why? Like, there's no why. But like, if you have a lover who's next to you, who's your life, and if they get killed or they're in danger, you get,
Yeah.
you're going to be back
It's
on
different.
it. You're back on it. Yeah. And I think that it's an interesting, we don't, of course, in our modern society, we don't play with that aspect of, in war. We try not to anyway. We seem not to. But, like with using the relationship to create a bond. So it's an interest. I mean, like,
Yeah, they're
there's camaraderie, brotherhood,
Sure.
of course.
But they've
But
replaced
it's
that
extreme.
aspect of it with technology.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which is interesting.
And maybe that's good, but I
Maybe
don't
it is good. But I mean, I could imagine a world in the future where things go totally sideways, where we go back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make a movie about it. That's good.
I mean, that is a possible future dystopian movie. Like
Yeah.
a new Spartas, the Spartas of the 2059.
Well, as soon as, like, what is that Einstein thing? If World War III is fought with nuclear weapons, World War IV will be fought with rocks.
Yeah.
sticks in rocks, so it's like a...
Yeah. Well, if it's World War that does it, it's probably going to wipe out the whole race. But if it's something else, there could be like everyone thinks of dystopia as being something man created, which is real possible. But it's also possible we get hit by an asteroid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's more possible, I think. That's more likely. I think we could fuck up and nuke each other, but it's probably not going to happen because people have been really good about it since 1947.
Yeah. They've been...
It's nice. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, good
Or
work,
45,
guys.
I guess.
Yeah, good work.
But there's a giant difference between things that you can control and things you can't control. Through diplomacy and people aging out, it's possible that we could never have a nuclear war. It's not possible we're not going to get hit.
Oh, yeah, no. That's why,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I very much encourage any NASA programs that are, they got their telescopes pointed into the stars. They're like, oh, here comes one.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can go get it.
Yeah.
Nudge
Yeah.
it, nudge it.
They're close. They're close to being able to do that. Neil deGrasse Tyson said they're about a decade away from being able to deflect asteroids.
Yeah,
This,
that'll be a big deal.
yeah, but the hope is in that decade that we don't
get hit.
We
Or-
don't miss one because some of them come in from behind the sun.
Oh, yeah, no, they're like, oh, yeah, we don't, oh, whoop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not cool. I
Well,
don't
then
like that.
there's so much weirdness in space anyway. There's solar flares that could take out our whole grid and kill all our communication systems, and they just random.
And also the thing is, like, we don't know, like, say we had one of those like 300 years ago, which in cosmic time is not that long ago.
nothing.
It's nothing. And we didn't have the infrastructure to know that it would happen. Like, we were just a bunch of guys hanging out.
Right.
So, like, we were just like, whoa, that's a weird, like, the Aurora Borealis is pretty strong today.
Yeah.
That's cool. But
Yeah.
now we're like, oh, shit, our computers are fried. So it's like a whole different, it's a
Well,
whole
it's also
different,
now
the stakes are different.
We have the ability to go and look at the data that they had from a couple hundred years ago, and say it appears that there was an event, and the event, if it happened today, we would be fucked.
Right.
And we did
The
not
same
prepare
exact
for
thing,
this
yep.
event when we were constructing all this equipment.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Well, because
Yeah.
because also the equipment got built. It got built over time. It was like a slow, this made this and this made that, and we
Right.
relied on this. So now we made
Exactly.
this. Yeah, we built like our house of cards like pretty quickly too,
And the
like
foundation's the weakest part
it doesn't exist. I don't think there is a foundation
because it's all
I
dependent
really don't
upon
think
the
there is.
grid.
I really don't think there is a foundation.
Well, the
That's cool.
foundation is what powers it, and it's all dependent upon a grid.
Yeah.
And the grid's very vulnerable, physically vulnerable. It's vulnerable to cyber attacks.
I like that also. We thought we were geniuses by putting all that online.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, we'll make the grid automated. No, don't do that. It's much better when there was just a guy throwing switches.
Yeah,
'cause, like,
way better.
He's not gonna. You can't do anything to him.
Just guard that guy.
Yeah, guard that guy.
Yeah.
Give him a lot of money.
I love that expression, in the cloud. Bitch, where's this cloud? That cloud is in fucking Cleveland. What are you
It's not-
talking
it's
about?
not cool.
There's no cloud.
The cloud is not
That's
cool.
such a lie. Stop calling it the cloud. That's a dirty lie. Oh, it's in the cloud. I
Yeah.
just go get it. How do you say that? Why don't you say it's in the stars? Why don't you just lie to me and say it's in heaven? Tell me it's in heaven.
Say it died.
All
Yeah,
my photos of
we
my
can
baby.
resurrect that. Yeah, we can resurrect it.
My family, my
print,
dog, they're all
print
in heaven.
everything. I say print everything. That's my philosophy.
Well, even the print everything thing. The real problem with us is all of our data is on hard drives. All of it.
Yeah.
And
No.
there's just paper books, hard drives, and that's it. So if something big happens, everything's useless, and we start from scratch.
Yeah. Paper books are still kind of work, but
Yeah.
a lot of the modern innovations aren't probably even in paper books. They're
A lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Well, it's funny because like the movies, for instance, one of the things is I always archive a film print of all my movies because the digital storage of movies, if you ask anybody even in the business, they don't know whether in 10 years you'll be able to play a movie that you have now, like whether you physically or how it degrades, all those things they don't know.
That's crazy.
And so I'm like, that's why I make film prints because I'm like, I know that like we keep the film prints in this locker, and you can at least pry them out and always have it. But like, I just think it's crazy that we don't know whether the movies will exist. It's a crazy thing.
Don't worry about it, Zach. It's in the cloud.
Yeah, it's so fucking in the cloud.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, no, it's
Really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
That's hilarious. It's in the cloud. Why are you worried?
Yeah, that's a dirty expression that they should ban that expression.
They love that expression, though. It's
I
like
know,
one
but
of
it's
their
a
favorites.
dirty lie. There's no cloud.
But it makes
Stop
people feel
saying that.
safe because it's like
does.
it makes them feel good because it's like the cloud is so reliable and so like, and also a thing you don't need to worry about or understand.
It's also beautiful. It's
Yeah,
fluffy. It's in a
it's-
blue sky.
And all your info's safe in there.
Yay.
And nothing can hurt it
Yeah.
except for everything.
It's just horseshit.
It's so
Total horseshit.
It's so
Yeah.
crazy.
It's on hard drives.
It's so crazy.
And if you had to start from scratch, imagine stumbling upon some ancient Egyptian hard drives and go, okay, where do we even begin?
you can't play it.
Yeah.
You can't play it.
What is this?
You might be looking at it and
Right.
you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. How is it encoded? What is the equipment I need to connect it to in order to? Does it play out loud? Do I see it? What is this?
It's
Do
like-
I experience it in my head?
It's like when you show your kid a vinyl record, right?
Right.
I'm showing my kids a vinyl record, and they're like, "This is incredible. How does it work?" I'm like, "Well, the needle kind of bounces up and down on those grooves and makes sound. It sounds like a song." And they're like, "That's an insane technology." I'm like, "No, that's not insane technology. Your iPod or your fucking phone, that's insane technology.
Yeah.
That's a thing you can't explain this to me." Okay, I just explained that to you.
I love the fact that I'm in my car and like my daughter loves Melanie Martinez. So I have no idea what the song is. Tell me what the song is, and she'll tell me what the song is, and I can say play Melanie Martinez, whatever the song is, and it
plays it.
instantly plays it.
Unbelievable.
Instantly. And it's
Unbelievable.
coming through the speakers and it sounds amazing. There's all this sound.
That is incredible.
It's
It is incredible.
bananas.
Or
It's
you could say like
bananas.
play Johnny Cash.
Instantly.
Instantly.
Play Hurt.
Yeah, play her right now.
Instantly.
Instantly.
And it just starts playing it.
And you're like, "Oh God, why'd I say that?
Yeah, listen to this.
Why'd I
Watch
say
this.
play hurt?"
Play God's Gonna Cut You Down. What a world that we live in. Instantly.
By the way, I was
It's
just
incredible.
listening to that the other day.
This is gonna get us in trouble with YouTube.
Is it? Oh, sorry.
Fucking
I did want to show you
ridiculous.
this picture of Alessandro's legs.
If you hum it too well, it'll
We
get
were
it.
so much better off when we were trapped in our walled garden.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We got out and now it's over.
Yeah,
Where
it's fucking nuts, man. It's nuts. I think it's beautiful because I love the fact that you can tell me about something and I can get it instantly. Like someone could say, "Oh my God, you have to see."
That's Sandro's legs.
Oh my God, that's insane. He looks like he's gonna die.
Yeah, and he loves that.
That's particularly ridiculous.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that guy has no body fat.
Zero body fat.
What is his
The
body-
guy said to him, the guy at the gym said, "Are you 8% body fat?" He goes, "If I was 8% body fat, I'd kill myself."
That's so ridiculous.
But that's his thing, though. Like, he literally is like, I'm in space. I'm like a space. You know, how, like, we get stuff from the space program. You know, like we figure out how a razor works, or like get shaving cream that keeps the hairs from flying. That's what he is to me. Like, he's like, I'm up here on the ragged edge, so I could give you this information back. Like,
oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it, right? Like, you do learn health and wellness things from people that are on the fringes in the bodybuilding world.
yeah, and he's in his 60s, so it's like, you know, you're like, okay, this guy can have legs like that in his 60s, so give me some, give me a little, give me a little, you know, give me a little of the knowledge.
Yeah.
And he's funny too, because he's like, look, I don't have a family. I don't have kids. This is what I do.
Jesus.
You know, this is
In
what I
his
do.
60s,
I
he's just getting jacked?
just get jacked, and I like research. I test my body constantly. He's like on the ragged edge with every single, like, you know, like, he's always making these small adjustments. He goes, I ate a sesame seed and I saw that I was a little less ripped. You know what? You know,
So ridiculous.
you know what? Because it's like, oh, he's constantly like, zzz, you know, like, it's like he's on a razor's edge, you know,
Well,
which I love. You know,
People
'cause
like
it's
that are can
extreme.
be super beneficial to any sort
Well,
of
that's what I
extreme
mean,
sport.
like extreme sport. That's what I'm saying is that,
Yeah.
like, you can those little pieces of information they tell you about, like, oh, you know, like, whatever, I'm taking this, or like I thought about this and I experimented with that, and you're like, oh, okay, like, thanks,
Yeah.
thanks for that, thanks for being out there,
Right.
You know, thanks for being in the oxygen mask, like up on the stratosphere.
Yeah, the possessed mad genius.
Yeah, it's they. By the way, the world's made of that.
Oh, yeah. There's a guy out here in Austin, Texas. His name is John Donaher. He's widely considered to be the greatest jiu-jitsu coach ever.
Oh, really? He's
And
here.
He's a professor. He was a professor of philosophy at Columbia.
That's cool.
And was spending time as a bouncer. Wanted to learn martial arts. Got into jiu-jitsu and became a jiu-jitsu fanatic to the point where he's teaching it and sleeping on the floors.
Did he
in
have a
between
natural gift for it
classes.
anyway? Like, it was like a
Well, he's a very strong guy.
double-double, okay.
He's very strong. He played rugby, but rugby destroyed his knee, fucked his body up, but which kept him from ultimately competing. But he's just a crazy mad genius. It doesn't give a fuck about anything but fighting. So all he's doing is like teaching people how to strangle people during the day, and then watching tape and reviewing techniques and creating the next workout schedule. And they work out 365 days a year. 365 days a year.
Yeah.
And his number one student is Gordon Ryan, who's widely considered to be the greatest jiu-jitsu athlete of all time, without question. That's his belt up there, the Abu
that's
Dhabi
awesome.
belt, when he
Oh,
won
that's
Abu
awesome.
Dhabi. But he's his number one student. And they just train 365 days a year. They take no days off. Christmas, fuck
Christmas.
you. Your birthday, fuck you.
That's cool.
And it's just,
cool.
you've got days where you don't train as hard. Are
Yeah.
you worn out? Well, you're not going to train as hard today.
Yeah.
And then
Well, it's like you
tomorrow-
were saying, like, like you understand but like at that point you're in the rhythm, you understand your body, you know, like, well, okay, I'm hurt
Yeah.
today, I know how to do this. But we're always learning. We're always we're not gonna stop learning. We're not
Yeah.
gonna stop understanding. That's the one thing that's crazy about YouTube too, is that this idea that there's a resource. You know, like it used to be to find a technique or to learn something, you have to go to the guy's house, fucking sleep on his porch.
Yeah.
He's not gonna fucking train you. He's
Right.
gonna slap you around, like whatever. We're now like these kids today, they get like a lot of their shit, the basic shit. They're like, I'm learning this. I can learn something that I had no access to,
Absolutely.
zero access, which I think is
100%.
incredible. That's,
I have a folder on my phone that's all jiu-jitsu moves that I didn't know existed. And I just watched the jiu-jitsu moves. I'm like, how is he doing that? Left leg in. Oh, he went with the right arm. Wow. And then I'll send it to my friend Eddie Bravo, who's a jiu-jitsu instructor. I'll go, is this legit? And he goes, I'm going to try this tonight. And
See?
then
Yeah.
we'll text each other back and forth. So we're like, it's a constant new thing.
sure. That's
There's the
cool.
basics.
Put it in the workshop and
but
let's see what happens. Yeah.
A kid could be just all you need is a computer that connects to the internet and a friend. And you can get good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's better to have private instruction. Of
course.
It's better to have a coach who, you know, when you're teaching a classes, you've got to make sure this arm is protected and keep this here. And you have to have the defense. You have to put your hand on the hip. If you don't have something like that, it's going to take you longer to figure it out. But if you are diligent and you're really dedicated and you have a fucking YouTube connection, you can get good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, no,
Like
I
that
think
used to
that's
have to go to the mountains.
That's
You used to
true.
have
Well,
to-
that's what I mean. Like, and that's true of a lot. That's true of a lot of things now. Like,
Yeah.
I had this like recently. I had this crazy Fortnite addiction, right? And I was
Oh,
like,
no.
yeah, I started
I
playing.
could get it.
I started playing Fortnite with my son, who's 10, and he was like, nah. He tapped out immediately, and I was like, well, you should come back because this is kind of cool. So I'm playing, and then like 3 months later, I'm like, what the fuck is the matter with me? Like, my
Yeah.
wife is like, you got to stop. I am done with this. I am done. Right?
You and I are the same thing.
I go, she's like, I'm so done. You need another fucking hobby, right? Like, and so she's like, I bought you some clay, right?
Oh.
And so I started doing some pottery, right? And that's where I was like, oh, YouTube is insane. Like, cause I just, in like 3 weeks, I had done like so now she's like, every search engine is like hand build pottery, like glazing, firing kilns.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, so I have
Much more productive.
It's much, well, by the way, I get something at the end.
And you feel better.
I feel so much better.
The feeling that you get when you play video games for 12 hours in a row, you feel terrible
You
when
feel
it's over.
sick to your stomach. It's literally too like, and you have something good happen. You're like, yeah, like I'm like, fuck yes. And I look over and my wife is like in the doorway going like,
What's wrong with
are
you?
you serious?
You're a
right
grown-ass
now?
man.
Should you not be making a movie right now or like writing something or doing something?
Well, it's
Like,
important
are
for
you
people to know
serious?
that even people who are successful movie makers are still going to get addicted to those goddamn things. They're
No,
heroin.
They're too good.
They're so good.
They're so well made.
We had a giant Quake problem, and I had a giant Quake problem for years, and I quit. And I quit cold turkey when I realized it was like I was playing 8-10 hours a day.
You can't see the hours.
Yeah.
That's what does it. When you
They
see
fly
the
by.
hours, when you see like a total number of hours
Yeah.
that you've played, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I could have written a novel.
I could have done
literally
so
could've-
much. I could have done so much. So I stopped. But then when we had a new studio in Los Angeles, we had a big warehouse. And we said, let's put a fucking LAN in here. So we put a local area network and bought some gaming computers and set it up for Quake. And instantly,
Back.
I was a junkie again.
Back.
Scratching my face. I was fucking every day. We were playing 3-4 hours a day. It was nuts. It was nuts.
See,
It just gets right into your. It's too good.
it's too good. They're
And
good at
they're-
it. Well, I saw
they're
that
getting better, man.
your
Racing simulator?
racing simulators too.
I haven't even hopped on that yet.
By the way,
We've had it for over a week.
The
I'm
problem with
scared
it
of
is it's like racing.
Yeah.
It's like the one thing I did, like I saw this the other day where they had one of the F1 guys went against like some kid and he beat him. And I was like, that makes me happy.
On the racing
On
simulator?
the racing simulator.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
was like,
of
that made me
course.
happy. Well, only just because, you want that skill set. You want in your mind that skill set to translate.
Yes.
Like you're like, see,
I was watching this thing on
Still
Formula
matters.
One drivers, like all the different things that they have to be able to do. Their response time is so much faster than anybody else's. They had this thing where they have the lights, and the lights go off, and you have to touch the light when it goes off.
Sure.
And the Formula One race car drivers were like off the charts.
oh, really?
And
They're
all
just
have,
wired
They
different.
all have crazy thick necks
Oh, yeah, from the...
because it's just.
And also their helmet's not light, it's
Yeah.
like it's serious.
Yeah, it's a fucking serious piece of weight up
Yeah,
there, bouncing
yeah.
your head around.
No, it's
and
fucking
you're
crazy.
whipping around. And I'm sure you've seen the comparison between a GT3 car and then a Formula One car on the same track.
No.
It's wild.
What is
Because the
what is the difference?
GT3 car looks amazing, and then the Formula One car, like, no way, that's not real. Is this real time?
Oh, as far as like it being able to stick to the track where like
It's so much faster.
It's so much faster,
It's
yeah.
so much faster, and the time that you have. Watch this. So on the left side, you have the GT3 cars. These are these are just GT3 cars.
that's the
Oh, the
Yeah.
right is the GT3 car. The
Yeah.
left is the Formula One car. Look how much faster
oh yeah,
they
it's
go.
gone. Yeah.
They're fucking insane. I mean, they're so fast, and the way they hug. I went to the COTA, the Formula One
crazy.
race out here.
Here, yeah.
Yeah, it's insane to see it live.
Yeah.
To see it live, you really appreciate it. It's just like, oh my God.
My daughter Willow's addicted to Formula One. She's like, I sent her down 2 years ago to it, and it was like look at that. See?
That sound, too, is
Yeah.
amazing. Woo!
Yeah, like the GT3, they look like they're not even moving in comparison.
Yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah, and I sent it out because at the time Formula One was wanting me to. We were going to do a film. I was going to do like a commercial for them, I was in the middle of pitching them, and they were like, "Oh, can we send you down to Austin to the race?" And I said, "I can't because I'm in the middle of this thing, but you can send my daughter." And Willa was like, she had like pit access. She was like losing her mind. She's calling me every 5 minutes, going like, "Are you insane? Look at there's like Hamilton. I can't believe it's right there." And I was like, "Okay, calm down. Don't be a groupie. I want you to like." She has like a tattoo of like Formula One, like a
Oh, wow.
a car. Yeah, she's really into it. But
Well, I know that Netflix series out here in America made it way more
blew it.
popular in
Blew it
America.
out. Blew it,
because
yeah.
it didn't make any sense
blew
that
it
it was so popular worldwide,
Yeah.
but not popular in a place that's most obsessed with cars.
yeah, like
Makes no sense.
You feel like we would just be like drinking the Kool-Aid of that so hard.
Well, our thing is just going around a circle real quick. Like, our thing is so silly in comparison. Like NASCAR?
Yeah, no,
NASCAR is so silly.
It's crazy, and you'd think that like we would dig like this kind of all the turns and like the
Yeah.
insane technology. It's like feels like it's right on our wheelhouse, and maybe it, and I think it can be.
well,
We'll
it
see.
turns out it is. It's just got to,
Takes a minute.
and it's
Yeah.
something like, it has something like a Netflix special has to happen for it. It's like what happened with the UFC with the Ultimate Fighter. The UFC was always
100%.
like crazy exciting, but then the Ultimate Fighter put it on television. And everybody's like, wow,
That's
this
cool.
is nuts.
Yeah, and you get to like invest in a personality.
Yes.
I think that's in the end, Americans love that they want to hook onto someone and ride them,
Yes.
through the whole thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the fun.
They want to get connected to that person and root for them and feel the journey. Especially the Ultimate Fighter was such a brilliant idea because you get these guys to live in a house together and then they're going to beat the fuck out of each other. And they
it's
know
really-
they're going to have to fight. So
It's
there's all
really-
this psychological warfare going on. There's like chest puffing and there's so much weird shit happening.
Yeah, it's by the way, it's a great show. And also because like the drama, if you have fighting and drama together,
Yeah.
it's kind of like an amazing combination. You can't look away.
And
really.
it's real fighting.
And it's absolutely real fighting. Yeah. Like, it's not like fucking around. And these guys are fighters. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. It's not like you got a bunch of schmucks and said, okay, you guys get in a ring and sort of see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, these guys suddenly are like,
And guys have gone from that show to become world champions,
absolutely.
which is wild.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's
it's very
and,
cool.
and you're like, oh yeah, I saw them when they were just like scrapping around the house. It's cool to see them like rise like that. It's an amazing show. It's cool.
Well, there's a few things like that, like Formula One racing and fighting, that it just has to get in front of enough eyes. It's just we have these things that we've always, like baseball, that's always been around. If you brought baseball out today,
No
baseball,
chance.
it doesn't have
No
a
chance.
chance in hell.
No chance.
Zero chance.
Golf, no chance.
I think golf would still make it.
Well, also because it's a ludicrous concept, golf. That's what I love about it. It's like, I'm an okay golfer. I've done a lot of golf commercials. My dad's a scratch golfer. He's an amazing
You've
golfer.
done a lot of golf commercials?
Like,
Really?
yeah, back in the day, because when I got out of college, I did like 10 years of TV commercials, and every day, I've done all the brands, I've done a bunch of Super Bowl spots. I did the like Clydesdale 9/11 tribute spot. Like, there's a lot of all these kind of, for me, that were all these like kind of touchstones. But along the way, I did like, PGA, I did Titleist, I did like all these like, I have a tour bag like in storage that says like Zack Daddy Snyder on it, like on my tour bag. Yeah. So, but like the guys, like you see these like, they are like, Phil Mickelson is like an insane, like he does this trick where you stand with your hands like this, and then he's behind you with his pitching wedge, and he takes a full swing and cuts it. If he sculls it, it's going to crack you in the back of the skull. But it goes over your head and lands in your hands, right?
What?
Was it standing right in front of you? I haven't seen the landing in hands one, but this kind of video goes
Yeah,
viral.
it's literally this. Watch.
Right
Yeah.
this
He's going to do it
close?
right. He's going to do it like.
Oh my God.
See, look at where. See that? Yeah, it's like that's. I did a spot with Phil.
Bro, fuck that.
I did a spot with him where I did a spot for him. I think it was with David Robinson for the PGA Tour, and he was sick. he had like 100-degree temperature, and like what it was basically we did these things. These guys are good. It was the name of the campaign, and it was like all these football players, and like golf would be. It was a ludicrous idea, but golf would be in these scenarios, and this was basketball. It was like 1 second left, Phil Mickelson comes in to play this basketball game. They're going to play with a golf ball, and they throw him the ball. The ref throws the golf ball to him, and he catches the ball on the blade of his pitching wedge, traps it on the ground, and then picks it off the gym floor, and the ball flies up, and then David Robinson dunks it. That was the commercial. So he's sick, and he's like, Zach, I don't know, man. Oh, also we did a version of it where we had made the floor out of balsa wood so he could take a divot.
Oh, wow.
And then the PGA was like, well, we don't want to look like it's... They were kind of mad because they were like, we don't want to look like we're destroying property. I was like, come on, guys. It's like cool. Like, it's cool that he digs the floor up, right?
They can fix wood.
Yeah, it's also not real. Like you can't actually do that.
That's funny. They were that
but
sensitive.
yeah, it was cool. They were that sensitive. But like Phil comes out and he's like, Zach, sorry, man, I'm sick. Like, I don't know. Like, I go, well, let's just try, do what you can. And it'll only be a couple shots. And so he's like, I'll do the best I can. So, I throw him the ball, and he just like cuts it in the air, and it, he like cuts it in the air, and then he traps it with his club. I'm like, holy shit! And then he's like, how's that? And I'm like, how's that? It's like fucking unbelievable. He was like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't know what you would do different. Like it's so crazy.
It's interesting when you see wizardry at that level.
Yeah.
Like the technique and the perfection of it at that level.
It's so incredible. You're like, fuck.
I didn't even play golf, and I could appreciate it.
Yeah, like John Daly too. Like I did a spot with John Daly too, and he was like, he's like comes out, and I guess the tournament before the one we had done, before the shoot that we did, we were doing it in Kaminsky Park in Chicago, right? And the idea in that one was like, he's, top of the ninth, 2 outs, down by 3, bases loaded, whatever, and the pitcher, here comes John Daly, right? And so what we did was, so the idea was like, we had this like minor league pitcher was supposed to throw a pitch, and he's, we did it with visual effects. He takes the ball out of the air. So what we did was we got this super long tee, right? And we put the ball on it. And I was like, John, do you think can you hit a drive with a 2-foot tee? Like, that sounds crazy. He's like, fucking no problem. But like when he came out, he was mad because he had picked up his ball. Like, he got fined by the PGA. If you pick up your ball halfway through the tournament, you can't just leave. They don't like that. And I guess he was having a bad round. And so he just said, fuck it. And he just picked up his ball and walked off. And they were like, so they fined him. And he was super mad that he got fined. And so he goes, I'm going to fuck up that Jumbotron. And I was like, John, that's me. I'll have to pay for it. It's not the PGA. And then he's like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, okay, I won't hit it. I didn't know. Like, I thought, he's like the sweetest guy. And then he just cranks this. He's like our Babe Ruth. Like he literally, I've done a bunch of spots with him. Like on his backswing, the club head is pointing down at the ground because he's so twisted, and then he just uncoils, and it's just unbelievable the amount of power that the guy, and he hits the ball out of the stadium, and it goes literally. We had PAs in the parking lot, and they're like, the ball just goes over their heads and like into the freeway. He's just a freaking.
Jamie, do you have that video that I sent you recently of that guy? There's this fucking guy who does this step in move.
Oh right, sure, like the Happy Gilroy.
It's
not quite that.
Not quite that, but with technique, and it's perfect. And the drive is insane, and the torque is insane. Again, this is coming from someone who doesn't know jack shit about golf. Look at this kid.
Jesus.
I mean, that is fucking insane.
The fact that he can actually, with that amount of backswing, the fact that he can actually hit the ball cleanly is unbelievable.
Is that Chinese?
I don't know about, I don't know.
It looks like Japanese to me.
Is it Japanese?
This writing is Japanese.
So he's Japanese?
Isn't
Could
it?
be. There's a lot of, it's very popular in Japan.
Or is it? Yeah, his name is Japanese.
Yeah, Korea too.
But
That's
that
unbelievable.
fucking technique is mad.
That's so cool.
Let me hear that again, because the
The sound is awesome.
That's where that could be. There's balls that do that.
Bro, I don't give a fuck what does that. Look
And
at
also,
where it
like-
ends. The club ends in front of his face.
Yeah,
Past his
jeez.
face. Near his left
It's
shoulder.
So much whip on the.
It's
on the-
amazing.
That's crazy, but yeah, it's fun.
That's
but yeah,
wild.
it was fun actually. That time in my life, traveling around and doing all those TV commercials all over the world. Like I had a crew of guys. It was like me and my boys, and we would just like literally go one job Papua New Guinea, one job Germany, one job Mexico, one job Iceland, like over and we were just on the road completely out of our minds. And it was just, and like whatever product we'd be like, okay, I'd be pitching, the guys would be like, what are we doing next? I'm like, I got to get on the call. We like have an agency and I'd get on the call in the hotel room and I'd pitch them and I'd like be out of my mind. I don't know what I'm saying. And I'd come out and they'd be like, how'd it go? And I think I got it. And they were like, did you nail it? And I was like, yeah, I told them it's going to be like low angles and slow motion and it's fucking cool. And they were like, okay, cool, let's go. And it was just this, we were just in this machine. And frankly, I learned everything. Like I spent 10 years, like the 10,000 hours thing.
Mm-hmm.
It literally, I spent 10 years with every production problem because I was a director of photography. I was the DP and the director. And, we were a pretty small show, but we had giant clients, anything you can think of. So then when I went to make a movie, it wasn't like there was no thing I hadn't seen. It
Right.
wasn't like I stepped on a set like, oh, I'm a first-time director. Everyone's like, oh, this guy's a first-time director. Like, what's he going to say? And I'd be
Right.
like, there was like, the tools were my tools. You know what I mean? Like, I was very comfortable with the tool set that I had in front of me, like more so than I probably should have been. I remember Matt Leonetti, who was the DP of Dawn of the Dead, that was my first movie, was like halfway through the thing, he's like, you know what you're doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what you're doing. Like, he goes, they can't fire you now. Because like we were halfway through, because like I was so diligent. Like on my first movie, I was so scared. Scott Stuber, who was the executive at Netflix, who was my executive on Army of the Dead, he was the one that hired me to do Dawn. And I wanted to do I wanted to be so conscientious. And I was so scared of like going over budget and not nailing it and making sure it was cool and all that. That like Matt Leonetti at one point was like, look, man, like you got to just fuck it. Make it cool now. Don't give a fuck. Just make it, do what you think. And it was such great advice because I think the movie's edge and all the coolness in the movie and the man comes around and all the like weirdness, the whole like montage with the Richard Cheese song in the middle, that was all just me going, all right, good. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to just go. And he goes, good. Because otherwise he goes, you're just going to make a movie that this zombie movie is going to disappear. Unless you fucking...
Add your sauce.
Yeah, you got to add your sauce. Because
Yeah.
he goes, otherwise it's like, look, another zombie movie, like who cares?
Right.
Like he goes, I know you know what's cool.
Well, you made it fun.
And I think that was the whole thing. For me, it was like, how do you make a B movie that's self-aware that it's a B movie, right? And in that self-awareness, it lets you off the hook to enjoy it because you can still be smart. Like you deconstructed the genre. Because like I've always been fascinated with genre and the deconstruction of genre. Like I'm a genre filmmaker. I always say to everybody, like people are like, what kind of film? I'm a genre filmmaker. Like, and that is to say that like in genre though, you can explore like philosophy, you can explore mythology, especially, which is like myth is like my main. Like we make myth, modern myth. Movies are modern myth. Superhero movies are modern myth. Like, is it not the same when you say? Like we have Superman, right, and Batman or whatever. Are they not the mythic answer to a lot of modern questions about like how we should live? Like you say Superman, is he not an invention, a 20th century invention that says to us like all the fucking shit that we run up against, whether it be war or like class struggle or whether it be, relationships between different countries. does Superman not appear in answer to us primitive brains trying to figure out where we are? Like, you make a guy like Superman so he can answer some of those questions. He can represent a point of view that is not helpless in the face of the insanity that is, like, the problems of the 20th century. And I think, and Batman in the same way, he's an answer to, like, the urban jungle needs a myth, just like the ancient jungle needed a myth, or the ancient, those all, like, in those days we'd say, like, why is the volcano erupting, right? But now we say, because we didn't know, we're just like, I guess it's the gods are mad,
Right.
But now we have, now the problem is, like, why do I feel helpless in the face of technology or whatever?
Right.
So we need an answer. We need an additional answer. And I think that's what I've always, and I feel like genre has allowed me to make those comments, Mm-hmm. And I think, look, the funny thing about, what I always find interesting, the thing that I always find fascinating about sort of the movies I've made and how they've landed on pop culture is that, like, I remember, like, in the last article, it was like, it said, Zack Snyder, love him or hate him, right? Like, and I'm like, hate him? Like, what? I don't understand. Like, what? It's a movie, It's not, I mean, you look at Rebel Moon, you're like, okay, well, there's not a lot. It's not weird enough. It's not offensive enough to hate him for, right? In my opinion.
People find a reason to hate today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And 99% of those people also hate themselves. That's exactly what's going on. And when people are very hateful over art, you can like it, you don't like it. There's a lot of stuff I don't like.
I have no issue with you not liking the movie. That's not the question. Who cares?
Yeah.
The thing is, like, you would personalize, you'd hate me because of, like, I don't understand that. Like, I don't.
Because you're unreasonably successful. That's how they feel, and that's what happens with people. You've done so many hit movies, like, fuck this guy. Like, people compare themselves to someone like yourself that's been so successful, and they get angry. That's why you can't read comments.
Yeah, I get. No, that's why you cannot read comments. Never read
comments. Comments are, they're essentially long form comments, are what a lot of articles are.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
That's exactly what they are.
It's these people that are film snobs that get, very pretentious about certain aspects of movie making and decide that their way is the only way. Like, listen, I like the Barbie movie. Okay. I found it enjoyable.
Awesome.
I went with my daughters and I had a good mindset. I said, let me just enjoy this movie.
Sure.
Just not be like, what the fuck is this? Man didn't fuck this. I just said, this is a fun movie.
Yeah.
It didn't offend me. I laughed a bunch of times. I thought it was fun. And I went online and saw so many people angry about that fucking movie. And it was all men.
Yeah,
and
as it would be.
Listen, first, you're out of your fucking mind if you go to a Taylor Swift concert and you expect to see AC/DC. You're out of your fucking mind. You're going to a Taylor Swift concert. You know what it is. So if you go to see the Barbie movie, you know what it is. Why are you mad?
Yeah, no one, like, were you shocked? Like,
it's literally
it's
about
called Barbie,
girl's doll.
Yeah, what did you think was going to happen in it? Also. And by the way, I love the movie, and I'm actually lampooned in that film. There's a line in the movie that says, I feel like I was in a dream where all I cared about was the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. That is a line in that movie.
That's hilarious.
I'm literally, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I think that I was like, okay. My wife was like, she goes, that's cool. Right? Like, that's cool. that they came after you. I was like, it's 100% cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see when there's like such a strong reaction to certain things, and especially amongst like really wild hardcore fans, because there's hardcore, like, particularly.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah, well, you also face it because you cover these genres, you cover these subjects that are iconic. Superman, Batman. I mean, just those alone.
No. And by the way, that's a lifestyle choice for a lot of people. It's not a movie.
Right.
It's not a movie. It's not like if I made a romantic comedy, you'd be like, okay, that was fun.
Right.
Like, the people who love, and by the way, I love that they feel this passionately. I'm not, in no way would I criticize that, because I feel I live the same life, right? Because like for me, it's morning, noon, and night. But so for those guys, it's not just a movie. And so you have to, on some level, you have to acknowledge that this is their religion, you know, and they feel strongly about it. And by the way, the truth is, it's my religion too, you know. So I tend to get in trouble because of I do take a deconstructivist point of view because of Dark Knight Returns, because of Watchmen. If you've read those two comics, it's hard to go back, you know, to like, you want to, and it's because I care that I want to take them apart. Like, I want Batman, like people are always like, well, Batman can't kill, right? So Batman can't kill is canon. And I'm like, okay, well, the first thing I want to do when you say that is I want to see what happens. And they go like, well, don't put him in a situation where he has to kill someone. I'm like, well, that's just like, you're protecting your God in a weird way, right? You're making your God irrelevant if he can't be in that situation. He has to now deal with that.
Yeah.
You know, if he does do that, what does that mean? What does it tell you about? Does he stand up to it? Can he survive that? Right? As a god, as your god, can Batman survive that?
I never thought that was canon, that Batman can't kill. But
well, for a lot of people, it is.
That seems ridiculous given the circumstances in which he operates.
Yeah, well,
and all the weapons.
Don't read the comments right now. Don't read the comments.
Yeah,
this
seems ridiculous.
It's well, I mean, and you know, there's this huge so in Dark Knight Returns, there's a scene where, and I copied it kind of in Batman vs. Superman, where he grabs the M60, he busts through the wall, and he grabs the M60, and he's like, the guy's like, in the comic book, he's like got this kid, the mutant has this kid with a gun to his head, and he's like, I'll kill him, I swear I'll do it. And Batman says, I believe you. And he shoots him straight in the head, because it's like a no-win scenario. It's like the Kobayashi Maru of, you know, the Kobayashi Maru is that, in Star Trek, it's that test they put Kirk through where there's a no-win, right? Because they want to see how you'll react, right? So they say, okay, we're gonna make a scenario, a test scenario where you don't win, where there's no way to win. And in that situation, we find out what you would do in a no-win situation, because if you're going to be the commander of this spaceship, you're going to be in situations where, you know, it's life or death, and especially when there's no tricking it, right? There's no tricking death in this case. And the famous thing with Captain Kirk is he went and hacked the machine and made it so there was a solution.
Yeah.
And so that was his response to the no-win situation, was create a scenario where he wins, which is cool, which is a cool character, you know, that's a cool character move. But like, that's kind of how I felt. That's what they would say, don't do that to Batman. Don't put him in a no-win situation, because we don't want to see him lose. Like, we can't see him lose. He has to maintain this godlike status. And that's what the cool thing about Frank Miller. Frank Miller said, fuck it. I want to see who this guy, like if a guy, so you're saying to me that I've got a gun to this kid's head, you're Batman, there's no move. There's no trick. There's no throwing the batarang. There's no a dust ball to distract me. Like, I've just got to pull the trigger and I kill this kid. So you're saying in that scenario, what's Batman supposed to do? Right?
Right.
Yeah. He's going to lay down his gun. What's he going to do? Like, it's the guy says to him, I'll do it. I swear it.
I believe you is perfect.
Yeah, I believe you. And
I believe you. Yeah.
You know, so I'm just like, that's where like Frank Deacons takes Batman and just tears him in half.
Yeah.
And you've got to now come out the other side of that. And Batman is still the hero. Batman still does the right thing. He maintains his code, he doesn't change, but like our perception of him changes. And I think that's like I have run afoul of, but a lot of the fandom who have gotten to the same place I have with the characters where they need to test them to like, and I feel like the characters, it's been my experience that the characters have not let us down. Like, these myths have not let us down. you put them to the ragged edge into that scenario, and they come out the other side, and you're like, fuck yeah, there's a reason why Superman is Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like he can handle it. He can fucking take it because he's so iconic. Like you see like the red S, you go anywhere in the world with that Superman t-shirt on, anywhere. And you say to any kid, like, what's this? Oh, that's Superman. Yeah, exactly. Like, that means something. That's like fucking cool.
Well, not only that, it's one of our first ever superheroes.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, just think of the name. It's so unoriginal. Superman.
It's the most, you couldn't think of that today. That's
It's
not
so ridiculous.
You can't do that today.
I know. If you tried to come up with a Superman today, everybody, shut the
Superman?
fuck up.
That's horrible.
That's your guy?
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on, man. We've got so many different interesting
But
characters
that's why the Trinity, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, are so powerful because they're literally, obviously, the origin concept, right? Wonder Woman,
Literally, yeah.
Batman. Batman is the only anomaly because he's like a Batman. Like, what does that mean?
Right.
Like,
He doesn't even have powers.
yeah, he's just like he's half bat. Like, what is that?
He's just got a lot of money.
Yeah, he's got a lot of money. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
like my favorite thing we did in Justice League, where Bruce says that line about like when Flash says like, "What's your power?" and he's like, "I'm rich." I always thought that was cool.
Kind of crazy that no one decided to genetically experiment on a Batman. Like make
a Batman.
Yeah, but for another version of Batman. Like take a guy and hit him with some Wolverine juice or whatever the fuck. And
other animals.
Just turn him into a superhero.
Yeah.
Instead of have him just be a rich guy, give him some crazy genetic mutation, something that they do to him that turns him into something.
But I think that is the thing. I mean, not to that extent, but that's the thing that Frank does, and that's the reason why I wanted Affleck, because like to me, Batman's a big dude, right? Affleck's 6'4", he's like a legit big dude, and like in the boots are like 2 inches, so like he's literally almost like 6'6" in the costume. Like when he comes out in the costume with that little bit of, we put some muscle on him, and then there's a muscle suit under the suit, and he's like he's like legitimately a scary looking thing. He's just like standing there, and you're like, holy shit, like dude, the chin is so insane in that cowl. Look at him. He's like, I took that picture, by the way. He's like legitimately, like that's Batman to me. I mean, I don't know, like what, because
Christian Bale was a great Batman.
He's a great Batman, but he's still like, 5'10". It's cool. I mean, not to be. I'm not
does
being,
mean something.
I'm not being rude
was
about
Batman giant in the comic books.
In some of the in Dark Knight Returns and in Frank's comics and in the classics, he's a pretty big dude. He's always been pretty thick. In Dark Knight Returns, if you look at Dark Knight Returns, there's a line like where he's trying to hold someone's gun and his finger can't get in the trigger guard because he's so big. Like where he's like, I like things like that, like where you're just like, he's like, he has this genetic like gift of just being this big fucking dude. And other than that, his parents were murdered in front of him, and he's also like a billionaire. So like that weird, like you want it to not be just one of those things, right?
Right.
It needs to be all of them in order for him to really to do what he can do.
But if somebody really wanted to fuck around with the genre today, if he had all that money, wouldn't he invest in some wild genetic engineering that turns him into an actual superhero?
Yeah, so it's fun. Well, I think that's the real. That's the
Batman
fun
fans
of
are pulling their hair out.
Yeah,
right
like they don't
now.
like
What
that. They
are
don't.
you
They,
saying? You
Batman's on
can't kill-
steroids.
Not just steroids.
Not just steroids. You wish it was steroids.
Yeah, I'm talking something way crazier.
Well, it's funny because like I did that scene. Like there's that scene. I think it's in. I don't think it's in the. It might be in the theatrical, but it's definitely in the director's cut. Where like he wakes up and there's some chick in the bed with him that. From the night before, because like I always say, like Batman fucks to forget for sure. Batman's a drunk for sure. Because like he has huge trauma, right? Like, and I think that like you wonder why he's a playboy. It's because like like anybody, like that's a common. Fucking forget is a common. That's a real thing. That's a way to deal with trauma. And I think that like I have that. There's that bit. He like wakes up and there's like just painkillers on his bedside table, and he just like pops them and drinks some wine. I'm just like, to me that's Batman. Like he's got a Maplethorpe above the bed. He's got his glass house, and he's just like, he has an aesthetic that's like clean, but like that's all he does. That's like his life, like
The thing about Batman, the modern versions of Batman, the Miller Batman, your Batmans, what's interesting is that now superheroes are these flawed, like very, very distressed characters.
Sure.
Like the Watchmen is the best example.
Watchmen is all trauma.
It's all trauma, and they're all crazy.
They're completely crazy.
And it's such a good movie. Why the fuck was there never a Watchmen 2?
Well, because, frankly, the comic book doesn't exist. For me, that's why there wasn't. I just was like, the thing that's awesome about also that, it's one of those things like when you start to really, look at like Night Owl not being able to get it up because he's not in his costume. Like that's just a cool, to me, that's just like that's boiling down superhero to its fucking purest thing. I don't get turned on unless I got to go out, fucking save some people, do some crime fighting, and now I'm fucking ready to go.
Yeah.
Like that to me was like, that was like, that as a superhero movie, as a concept, took a long time to like land with the boys or like these other kind of superheroes where now it's cool to deconstruct superheroes. It's kind of fun. Everyone's having a good time with it. And I was doing it, almost, 15 years ago. And, it just, I just don't think superheroes were as deep in the culture as they are now, where like all those things would land, like all that deconstructive kind of work that we were doing at the time was really in reference to comic books, not comic book movies, because Watchmen was written, in response to the comic book industry, not necessarily comic book movies didn't exist when the book was written.
Right.
So it's a very much, Alan Moore was very much obsessed with the morality of comic book heroes within comic books. And so, and he just took an adult look at it. He's a smart genius. He's a fucking pure genius. So.
Well, that was the thing that people figured out along the way with graphic novels as well, was that comic books aren't just a thing that children like. I was a giant comic book fanatic when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a comic book illustrator. That's what I wanted to do.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I had one bad high school art teacher, and it ruined it for me.
Fucking guy.
He ruined it for my friend John DeVore, who was the most talented guy in the class. When I found out that he gave him an F, I was like, are you out of your fucking mind? This guy was so talented.
Wow.
And he was like, I was pretty good, and he was quite a bit better than me. And then there was this other guy named Kevin, who was in our class, who was also like really good. And all of us wanted to be comic book artists. And I was really into the more adult versions of it. Like there was some amazing like horror genre comic books back in the day, like creepy and eerie, that had these incredible like Frazetta covers.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen Creepy and Eerie?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, God, I love those things.
I'll tell you sorry, go ahead, finish your.
No, go ahead.
You want? Oh, so what I was going to say was that like, I was obsessed with growing up this comic book called Heavy Metal.
Yes.
Heavy metal is like my thing. Basically what happened was my mom, I was like 13 or whatever, and I bought, maybe 12 even, I'd bought a copy of Heavy Metal, whoever sold it to me, because it says Adult Illustrated Fantasy Magazine right underneath, like in kind of small letters, but it's there.
Right.
I would cover it with my thumb when my mom was around. But she, one Christmas, like got me a subscription to Heavy Metal.
Did she know?
She didn't know. She just thought it was a cool comic book, right? And I didn't say anything, of course. And that comic book, and when you see the R-rated version of Rebel Moon when it comes out, because basically the deal I made with Netflix was, they said, I wrote this script, and I said, this is the script I want to make. And they said, that is insane. And I said, yeah, but it's like heavy metal, but like in live action.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, is there any way it could be PG-13? And I was like, well, if it's PG-13, it kind of misses the whole point a little bit. But I can imagine that, for a mass audience and for viewership, that seems like the smart way to go. I go, what about this? What if take this script, I make you a PG-13 version that You can just blast into the world, and hopefully as many people see it as possible. And then you let me, as a bonus, you just let me make this version exactly as I think. And they were like, okay, that sounds cool. So coming at the end of the summer, you'll see my 2 3-hour versions of Rebel Moon that are like hard R-rated, the hardest.
What you wanted to do.
Which I exactly wanted to do. So they said, yeah, go do that. And so they were able, because normally when I do this, director's cuts, which is a thing now I'm weirdly famous for, the director's cuts were always an answer to a thing that the studio made me do, right? Like, here's my movie. They're like, yeah, we really want you to cut these parts out because they're not cool. They're like, the movie's too long or the movie's too violent or whatever. And I would be like, wow, really? Because I really think that's kind of the why of the movie. And they'd be like, no, it's really important. The focus groups told us that they don't like that, so take it out. So I'd take it out, but then I'd go like, I'd go over to home video right across the street and I'd be like, hey, guys, you want another movie to release? Because I got the shit. And they'd be like, absolutely, whatever you say. Because, at that time, there was a huge market for directors. It gave them a second kick at the can in home video, right? So they would be like, that's so cool. We get a whole other movie to market that like never before seen footage.
Right.
It just feels like a cool thing. And so that was how I've always done my director's cuts, always as a response to what the studio was telling me couldn't be in the movie. Because I never planned. I would always go into it like bright-eyed, like, oh, everyone's going to love this. Including, the studio, when you see my cut, you're going to think it's amazing. And they would like look at it and go like, bro, like this is too much. And so that's where my director's cuts kind of as a practice were born. It was born out of that me needing to show the world what I intended originally. And so, by the time now that I've got to Netflix with this Rebel Moon movie and my sort of the mythology around my director's cuts was kind of a thing, especially with Justice League, as you can imagine. They were like, you know what? Why don't we do a director's cut as part of the process rather than as a response to it? And I was like, that's really smart. Like, that's really cool because in a lot of ways, I totally get the economics of making a PG-13 version of this insane genre movie. Because what I'm asking, from a budgetary standpoint is high for like a boutique-y space movie that's a heavy metal comic. That's like people who love that will love it more than anything else, right? If I can land that, they'll think it's the coolest thing ever. But like for a mass audience, it might not be exactly what you would imagine. So I'm like, I can do both. And that's kind of where and that's why when you see the R-rated version of Rebel Moon, you're gonna be like, fuck, this is heavy metal like come to life is really what it is. And that's kind of what I really wanted to do. That was the thesis of my whole like me being turned on by this sci-fi, because like the thing you can do, I feel like the thing that you can do with that format was you could really deconstruct sci-fi. Like we always talk about, like I said this at the Directors Guild, like when Luke Skywalker walks into the cantina and like is confronted by Walrus Man, like, is that sexual? Like, is he like, he's fucking with Luke. Luke's like some farm boy in this bar, in this rough bar. Like, what's going to happen to Luke?
Right.
Like, that's a conversation you cannot have.
Right.
In the context of Star Wars. Right.
Right.
There's no chance.
Right.
Like, that's not going to, but like in heavy metal, that's real.
Yeah.
That threat is real.
Yeah.
And it's not anything other than like a naive farm boy walking into like a gritty city bar that he doesn't know what the fuck, he's out of his element. Other than that he's our hero.
Right.
And he's got to go through a crucible and he's got to learn, he's got to like, these are the like Joseph Campbellian parts of his journey. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's kind of what, it's cool because, I've always been like the hugest fan of heavy metal. I think it's like it was the coolest thing.
Heavy metal is amazing.
It's like, it always like it kind of broke me for comics a little bit because, it was always like super sexy and super violent. Mm-hmm. And so you'd get a normal comic and be like, when are they going to start fucking? Because, it's...
Yeah, it was always sexual. And there was one that I remember was like very stunning to me, very shocking when I was a kid. And it was a pretty sure it was heavy metal, but it was one of those genres where it was a guy and his wife started a relationship with a robot.
Oh yeah, cool.
And he tried to like fight off the robot, and the robot broke his arm with his big dick hanging out. Like the robot had like this big giant flaccid dick, and he broke the guy's arm and was like smiling at him. And it was just
So
like,
crazy.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Sounds amazing.
It was amazing, but it was also like indicative of that genre, those days. Like this is the 70s, right? The 70s when they first started publishing that.
Yeah,
right?
all that was on the Ragged Edge, which was so underground and so
Yep.
cult and so
Yeah.
weird. That's what I loved about it, and that's what I wanted to do with the movie. Is like say, what does the cult underground raw sci-fi movie
Right.
look like? You know,
So is it hard to do the PG-13 version?
it was very hard. It was really
Is it
really
conflicted? Like what does it
was
feel
super
like?
conflicted. Although the only thing I will say is that I was liberated by the fact that I knew the R-rated version exists. So there was in the other versions of this work, in the other director's cuts, there was a version where that director's cut never was seen. There's a very good chance that movie never saw the light of day, because where would you show it?
Right.
In the old world, in the movie days,
Right.
all you had was DVD as your option. And if DVD said, yeah, we're good with like just the normal version, then that would have been it. And
Yeah.
it would just die a death. And whatever you intended
Fuck.
for the movie would just never be seen. And that's just how it was. And so in this scenario, I was like super grateful to Netflix, because I was like, you guys have like done a thing that I've never been able to do in my entire career. And that is like, know that this version of the movie exists and it's going to be seen. So I'm happy to do whatever you guys think is right for the PG-13. I'm a good soldier, and I'm proud of it and I love it. But yes, it is different from like what I, was.
What if the R version, is it NC-17 or R? Do they do NC-17 anymore?
It's I won't say the exact rating. We're waiting to see. We're still like up against it, but we're trying to get it. It's TVMA right now.
What does that mean?
I don't know. No one does.
Mature audiences?
Yeah, like any TV show that's not, because like in TV, the cool thing about TV is they have TV 14, and then it goes to TVMA. TVMA literally has no top on it. Like I think it's like almost like porn is TVMA.
Is
No, like,
there?
I don't know what I look. No one understands the ratings. No one does. It's an alchemy that is impossible to know.
It's all subjective.
It's all
right?
subjective and bizarre. And so, and they also, it's genre related, right? So like, say for instance, the ratings board might say something like, well, this is a sci-fi movie, so it's too much. But if it was a horror movie, it'd be fine. But it's a sci-fi movie, so it's not fine. Or it's a superhero movie. That was the whole thing with Batman versus Superman. I remember the ratings board said, we just don't like the idea of Batman fighting Superman. I was like, well, what is that? Like, but how is that your opinion? Like, how is that? That has nothing to do with the rating.
The ratings didn't like
they
that?
kept saying like, they kept making it an R. They kept coming back with an R for us. And we were like, what do you want us to cut out? And they were like, well, we just don't like the idea of Batman fighting Superman. I was like, I can't take that out. That's the movie.
That's so ridiculous that they would have that kind of power.
So it was crazy. So we really had to trim it super.
Do you think that affected the final version?
I mean, if you see the director's cut of Batman vs. Superman, it's much better. It's a much better movie. In my opinion, it's a much better movie.
Well, it's
And-
representative of what you actually wanted to create.
Yeah, and I think that's true of all the director's cuts that I've done. Is that it's just a glimpse into the why you get to see better the why of the movie, the why of its origin, because like obviously something kept me awake for 2 years writing. Something
Right.
kept me jazzed about like, fuck yeah, I can't wait to do this. I draw for Rebel Moon, like I drew 3,000 storyboards for that movie. Like that is like a lot of work,
That's a lot of work.
to like, you got to care. That's 5 months of drawing after
Yeah.
I've written the script.
Wow.
So I've written the script for a year and a half, and then I draw the movie for like another 5 months.
Wow.
It's fucking insane.
Oh my God, you must have been going nuts.
Yeah,
Must have been missing Fortnite.
Yeah, that was before Fortnite. If I had by the way, it's a good thing I didn't have Fortnite because I would have like
It would have ruined everything.
The problem with writing and for me drawing is if I have one procrastination I can do,
Yes.
one,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Because like if I look at that blank pad and I look at the video
Right.
game controller, I'm like, oh yeah, this is way more satisfying.
Yeah.
That thing wants to fuck me up. That pad is trying to fuck me up.
The thing about the delayed satisfaction, though, is that if you could force yourself to get to the pad, when you're done, you'll feel good. And if you
so
play
good.
the video game, you'll feel. Last night, I started fucking around in my office. I was just watching YouTube videos and looking at pool cues. And then I said, all right, go to work. And I snapped and I went to work and I worked for a couple hours. And when it was done, when I went to bed, I felt great.
Awesome. No, I
felt
agree.
like I did it. I
Yeah.
did something.
I
The
agree.
feeling of doing something is so much better than the feeling that you have to carry for hours of fucking off when you knew you were supposed to do
No,
something.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And then, by the way, and in the end, I did it. I did that work, and I'd show like when when we went to film the movie. And I've always drawn the storyboards for my movies. It's like it's a problem, but it's a thing that I do. It's my only process. It's funny because when I made Sucker Punch, I remember we were talking about it, and I think it was my script supervisor. She said, "One day you're gonna like not need to draw these drawings, and you're just gonna, you're not gonna need to spend that time." And it's just funny that, like, in retrospect, it's like, obviously, I have to draw the drawings. Like, it's like, like, that's my process. Now I realize there's no way around it. There's no, like, you want a cheat. Like, I wish I had a cheat where I didn't have to draw the drawings, where I'd be like, oh, no, it's going to be fine. I think I can make it up on the day, and it'll be good. And I do make it up on the day, but the truth is that process of drawing is the process that I vet a lot of the ideas in that drawing. It's not just drawing, it's writing as well. I'll change the script, I'll do whatever. I'll be like, no, because that doesn't make sense. Look, when I see it physically, I'm like, no, you can't, that doesn't work. So I have to sort of construct it in the drawings a little bit sometimes.
When did you start doing that?
I started doing it, I did it throughout, I did it 300.
Did you learn it from someone?
I'd always drawn. Like I draw, and like I'd gone to school for fine arts, so I was always drawing shots and so. It's also a thing like in film school or when you're trying to think of something. Movies take so much resource, right? You need to make a movie. You're like basically an architect, and you have to convince someone to build a building, right? And it's so much work to convince people to invest, to get all the cranes and the steel. It's like impossible. So drawing is like a little taste of it, right? So like I can make, these are the shots I want to make, right? So in a weird way, it's like it's drawing that beautiful sketch of the building. In a lot of ways, that's what it's going to be, So you can get a feeling for it. And I think that's what it does for me. It satisfies the impossible group activity that's going to require me to convince people. Maybe that's why I love Fountainhead. It's like that. It's that process of getting people to believe in this thing that it's going to take resources and so much crew and building and designing and all that other work that's down the road. It's the drawing that I think is a little bit of it satiates that desire a little bit for me.
It gives them a framework too. There's
it's
something
hugely beneficial in the production process. Once they have that, everyone knows exactly what to do. It's an incredible tool once I have it.
Did you do it for Watchmen?
100%. My Watchmen books are insane.
Did you draw Dr. Manhattan's dick?
Oh, of course.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Could you make that movie today?
I don't know. Would they allow? I mean, that's
what's interesting, right?
Someone once gave me a statistic of how much time Dr. Manhattan's cock is in the movie, just full frontally in the film, and I think it's a fair amount. I think it's the only studio film it holds the record for most frontal nudity, male frontal nudity of any,
And it's kind of important.
It's super important. Like, he doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't give a fuck.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Like, he walks around like that.
He's a god.
He's a god. Like, what the fuck? You can't deal with it? Get the fuck. Like, I'll fucking vaporize you. Or I don't even care what you think. You're a cockroach.
Yeah.
It's like, what does he say? He goes, the world's smartest man is no more dangerous to me than its smartest termite. Like, it's like such a cool thing to say. Like, like he doesn't, like, you know what I mean? It's like, you really realize in the face of a god, like, he does, I've walked across the surface of the sun.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't
No, he was the coolest.
He's the best.
He's the coolest. And the transformation scene is fucking amazing.
By the way, we were just talking about the other day, like, one of my favorite sequences in any movie I've made is the birth sequence of Dr. Manhattan, the whole thing with the Philip, because it's Philip Glass did the music, right? We borrowed the music because I had heard that music and I was like, it's got to be this music. And we tried to, like, Tyler Bates, who's an amazing composer, I go, write me something that's better than this. And we just couldn't do it. So we just had to license it and I had to send Philip Glass the sequence. And he watched it and he said, okay, it's cool. You can have the music.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because it's like, it's just so,
play this.
It's just so rad.
I love this fucking scene.
Hear this. That's Philip Glass, this music.
When he knows he's fucked.
We built this giant oversized watch for those shots. That's good. Yeah, that Philip Glass is so good. That music is crazy.
That fucking birth scene is insane.
It's so good.
It's so insane. It's so good. The skeleton in the hallway with the muscles screaming. Oh my God.
I remember shooting that exactly like as if it was yesterday. Yeah. We had this air cannon. We had to fire at that guy with the mop.
Mm-hmm.
Because he like gets hit with it. And he was like overacting. I think we did like 3 takes. I was like, guys, just the first time he like flew on the ground. I was like, okay, it's too much. It's good fun. Yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting because, like, I think one of the things that after Justice League, I think one of the things that we really, as a group, as a family anyway, because I lost my daughter over that, at the post side of Justice League, I lost my daughter to suicide. And, I left the movie famously, and then the movie went on, and then later we were able to, like, finish the movie sort of in the way that we had always hoped. And I think the thing is that, like, the thing that I kind of sort of come back to when I look at that and when I look at the movies is, like, they're these markers, the movies are really these markers of time that even though they sort of transcend time weirdly, they exist beyond the time they were recorded, at these weird, like they're in the computer as sort of these singular, like little, you press it, but then it runs and it's real and it's time and it takes time to enjoy it and time to, like, you can't just say it, you have to watch it and feel it again, It's
Right.
like it's a weird thing in that way. And I think that, like, it just, the thing that you hope is that in the end, the markers meant something to people, and I think we've really fought around, because a lot of these, mental health has been a big thing for my wife and I, since losing my daughter, and we've tried the best we can to, like, support. The fans have done incredible, like, the fans have raised like over $1 million just to support, AFSP, which is the suicide, against suicide in America Foundation. And we've been like, it's been cool that the movies, these moments have, like, now in retrospect have, like, a purpose, and that they have, like, that the fans have gotten this opportunity to kind of, like, join with us and kind of, like, be with us to, like, and this, because it's a huge stigma, like, nobody wants to talk about, like, that they're having trouble,
Right.
that they're not okay.
Right.
And I think that what we've been trying to do lately, as much as we can, is, like, say, like, no, it's good. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not a sign of weakness. It's nothing. It's just, it's real. It's
part of being human.
It's kind of 100% part of being human. And I think that it was it's an easy thing to kind of say that, it's just stress, or I just like, I'm good. I'm not depressed. I'm fine, and it's an easy thing to just try and muscle through.
Right.
Where like, I think that, it's my hope anyway that like as a family that, the movies and our connection to the fans and our connection to like that cause has been really, really deep. And I'm just watching this actually it started me thinking about like what the movies mean, like what is their legacy, what are they, and if they can do, on one hand, they are the moments you see, for me, Dr. Manhattan, Leonidas, whatever it is, but then on the other hand, there's this other narrative outside of the stories, like what I was experiencing, and what made me think of it is just like what I was going through on that day when we filmed it, like what I was struggling with, what I was trying to deal with, is real. That's hard stuff. That was just life being lumpy for us. Just trying to make a movie, living in Canada, being away from the kids, just all that struggle. And then it's cool when, it's been cool for me that when the fandom and the movie, like in the case of Justice League, they lined up, where these people were like, no, we're not gonna. There's a movie out there that we want to see, and it's around a struggle that we had as a family, and all of it sort of came together. I always say, like, people are like, the fandom was toxic or whatever. They were so angry to get the cut that they were like. I go also, they literally, people's lives were saved by the money that those kids raised, like literal, like lives. Real tangible lives were saved by that money that those kids that you would say are these toxic fans, they're also responsible for the saving of lives. And that's just real. You have to acknowledge it, because if you don't, like you in some ways, the legacy that they were able to create is like dismissed. And I can't.
Well, that's just a reductionist view of things that people always like to apply to things that are controversial, especially when they're talking about your fans and saying something like they're toxic. That's such a dismissive thing. No, there's going to be some elements of any passionate, rabid fans,
of course,
that are going to be toxic because it means so much to them. And that's what you have to understand. The reason why they're behaving the way they're behaving, and the reason why they're screaming is, first of all, they don't think they're being heard. And second of all, it means everything to them. These people that are like deeply invested in your films, and in particular like things that have like this sort of iconic history, like The Watchmen or like Batman. I mean, these are very important things to people.
100%.
It's
100%.
like the same way people are fanatical about sports teams, the same way they're fanatical
Correct.
about, music.
It's tribal,
It's tribal.
100%.
It's very, very, very tribal. So for you, when you have vision and you have these storyboards and you have all this stuff and then you see something like, in my opinion, that birth scene is one of the great masterpieces of that genre. It's a masterpiece. It's like watching him be born and become Dr. Manhattan is fucking amazing. It's just, I remember being in the movie theater watching, going, oh shit. It was the perfect feeling. It's like what you want from these fantasy, escapism, graphic novel turned films. It was perfect.
Yeah, and it's cool. And even just like watching it and like, the comment, like I never said that the Superman was real and he's American.
Yeah.
I said that God was real and he's American. And if that doesn't give you like religious like fear, then like then you're just not human. Like you gotta like, it's okay. It's okay to be scared.
Right.
Because it's fucking scary.
Yeah, he's real.
Yeah, it's a scary thing.
It's a very scary thing, but it's
cool. Yeah.
But when you have these ideas and you have all this work and then it comes together, I mean, that's got to be insanely satisfying to watching a scene like that.
It is. It's a cool, like, I guess for me, like that, the process of like putting it together, and then like when it literally lands and it's what you drew and it's what you thought and the music and everything like lands, there is a like, I mean, I'm sure it's like anything. It's probably like the same thing like doing stand up or whatever. Like when when you're grooving, when you're in the groove with it, and it's just happening, you're kind of surfing it, and you're like, God, this is the feeling right here, right? Like you can't acknowledge it in the moment, but you could feel it. It could push you, like it's like a wave, and you can feel it. That's how it is, For me, it's such a long process, It's not instant gratification, It's like you really have to have like a head down mentality to get it to that position because, but I do, when I watch it that first time and it comes back and I'm like, yeah, that's like fucking, that's the why of it right there, and I think that keeps me going, frankly, that little high is really, it's really fun.
Well, that's the goal, right? The goal is to create that high. And that high, people leave a film like that that's like, you'll do things that you wouldn't have ordinarily do. Like you'll be inspired. Maybe you'll start working on something. Maybe there's certain things, and I think that's the beauty of creation in a lot of ways. It's just not just escapism, but it gives you. It's like a drug. It gives you this like boost of excitement that often leads to inspiration. It inspires you to action. It makes people do things.
100%. I feel like that if you can do that, then your movie's like, it's a huge success. If one guy comes up to me, like the thing about Man of Steel that I felt like is that Man of Steel is the movie that the people will come up to me and say like, that movie changed my life. Like that movie, like, like I thought it was about me, like I'm an immigrant. Like I just saw myself in Superman. It's like really like, I was struggling at the time. And when I saw it, I'd just be like, man, that's so cool. Like I'm so grateful that like, you felt that way about the movie. Cause I don't, like for me, it's like I send it off into the world. You think about like Netflix, for instance, where like you push a button and like, Rebel Moon, right? The zeitgeist is crazy because like Rebel Moon, so say right now there's like, it's like almost 90 million views, right? 90 million people, 90 million starts. So, or 90 million accounts said, turned it on, okay? Right. Give or take. They assume 2 viewers per screening, right? That's the kind of math. So you think if that movie was in the theater as a distribution model, so that's 160 million account or people supposedly watching based on that math. So 160 million people at $10 a ticket would be what is that math? I don't know. 160 million times 10. That's 1.6 billion. So like you look at the view numbers, you can use that rough. So more people probably saw Rebel Moon than saw Barbie in the theater, right? That's how crazy Netflix. That's the distribution model that they've set up. I was at this thing the other day and we were talking about Rebel Moon 2. And I said, and they were like, well, talk about Rebel Moon 1. I'm like, no. Like, go fucking watch it. I know you have it at your house. Like, don't, like, it's not like a theater situation. You could, like, turn it on your phone right now and watch it, like, right here if you wanted. Like, that's how crazy it is. I'm like, like that. It's so, this model, this machine they built is really something else. Yeah. It's really crazy if you think about it. Just like we were saying about the Formula One, like, they're able to, like, insert something into popular culture that's so, like, a deep cut. Like a documentary about Formula One. How else do you get that to the people?
Right.
No way.
No way.
No way. You release that in a theater, 5 people go.
Yeah.
Right. Literally 5 people go.
Yeah,
but like
put it on TV.
And like 100 million people see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's strange. It's interesting because it shows that there was an audience there. It's just like to get someone to go out of their house and buy a ticket. That's just too much of a tough sell.
It's a different model. It's a different model. And it's weird how they think about it. When you think about it in those terms, that you give the audience an alternative. Like you give them a chance to like go on this, like Rebel Moon's like, okay, that's new IP, right? No one knows what the fuck that is. What's a Rebel Moon? Some space thing? I guess. Like, okay, well, let's watch it. It's that the barrier for entry is so low
Right.
that it allows, I think what's cool is it allows a lot more original and weirdo stuff to
Yeah.
exist because, you know, especially like you think about the director's cut of Rebel Moon, which will be, if it was in theaters, a very boutique-y concept, right? A very singular, it's like the animated version of heavy metal. Like, you know, the movie, I'm like, you know, I'm a huge fan, but like not a lot of people have seen it. Where I feel like this is a chance where like when this movie's released, the amount of people that can lay eyes on it is crazy compared to what it would be, you know, in another, if I was releasing it, say, theatrically or whatever. You know, it's a 3-hour movie. Both of them are 3 hours. So it's much different. Like both the PG-13s are 2 hours, right? That was one of the things that we talked about also. Like I want the movie short, PG, right? That's kind of the prerequisite. Where I'm like on the R-rated version, it's like well, there's no rules. Like it's like no there's no expectations, no rules, no nothing. Like you get that experience is a completely different experience.
And when does that one come out?
It comes at the end of summer.
The end of summer.
I wanted
End of August?
I want enough time. Yeah, probably right in there. We don't have an exact date, but like somewhere. I wanted enough time so that I don't want them to be too attached to the PG version because I love them. By the way, like I said, I'm proud of the PG version. I think it's fun. I think when you see Rebel Moon 2 on April 19th, you will see a war movie. It's a fucking war movie is what it is. Like, cause like the first thing is like gather the team. Second movie is a war movie. The R-rated version is just a different journey. Like you just get there in a different way. And it's just more, like I said, it's just more weird. It's more boutique-y and more bizarre.
And more like the original.
More like heavy metal.
Heavy metal, yeah. The
It's
original
just more,
genre.
Yeah, more like a genre you can't really pitch a studio a live action heavy metal movie right now. It's just not I don't know how to do that. I don't know how you'd make that. You know, unless you are willing to do some sort of song and dance, you know, which I think that as a product, like I said, I'm proud of it. And I think it works for what they've generated because like basically for the same price as 2 movies, right? They get 4 movies, which is that's pretty crazy, you know,
Yeah.
because the director's cuts for the additional hour and extra stuff that we did inside of each of those movies. Each of the movies is an hour longer. What we did inside those movies with tone and with gore and sex and all that stuff within the same framework, you're getting 2 entirely different movies. It's not like extended version, you know, like that. I'd be like, okay, whatever, you know, like, oh, you did an extra, like weird little, here's the thing you cut out that you thought was too long. Mm-hmm. It's not like that at all. Like, you know, it's just a lot more, I don't know. It's just
True to the vision.
yeah. It's got balls. It's got a lot of balls.
And is that, I mean, that's got to be this thing where you're waiting. Like, wait. I want you to see the real thing.
I don't think, you know, it's a weird thing because I don't think, I mean, look, it's up to the viewers, you know, in a lot of ways. I don't want to like, by no means am I saying that you can't watch both. For sure you can. It's really how you do it. I feel like if you've seen PG-13 Rebel Moon Part 1, you should see PG-13 Part 2 because they're really closely related. I mean, they're like, it's a direct, you know, like it could be one movie. You could cut them together literally and just keep going. Where it's chapter 2, it's part 2. It's like where I feel like in the R-rated experience, it's just like a different, they're both going to release on the same day. So you can just binge it. Yeah.
That's the way to do it too with Netflix.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about Netflix is when I don't find out about something until like 2 or 3 seasons in. I'm like,
yes, 100%.
Let's
like
go.
I can, yes, exactly. 17
episodes.
It's the same muscle that made me play Fortnite for like 6 months. Yeah, exactly.
But if you have the time and a good series is bingeable, God, it's so
the
satisfying.
best. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
I think we could do another. That's what I always say to my wife. I'm like, how do you feel? And she's like, I feel good. Are you sleepy? No. Let's go.
Have you ever thought about doing like a Netflix series, like something that's so big that you couldn't do in 1 or 2 films?
Yeah. We've talked about it a lot. Like, I mean, nobody wants Fountainhead, but that's what I wanted to do. You know, I pitched him Fountainhead because like I've written this super adaptation of that book, and I just think I think it would be amazing. But no one wants to make it because they think it's like it's taboo. Ayn Rand is taboo.
Well, why is she taboo?
I don't know. She's taboo among the intelligentsia because they think she's a fascist, and they think the book's a fascist propaganda, piece of fascist propaganda. That's not why I like the book. I'm like, look, I happen to just like it because to me, it's a direct comment on making a movie, right? It's a movie about an architect who won't make the buildings that everyone wants him to make, and like what the struggle he goes through to get the buildings made the way he wants to make them. Of course I like that, like no movie director. I'm sure there's plenty of movie directors that don't like Fountainhead, but I just think that it just it says so much. Ayn Rand wrote Fountainhead in direct response to being noted on a script that she had written, and she had been studying this movie about skyscrapers, and they told her, she kept submitting versions of the script, and they kept noting her until it was unrecognizable, and then she was like, "This is what happens to work. It gets noted till it disintegrates, until it disappears." And so that's one thing that I've always wanted to do, but I don't know that I don't know that the world will allow that.
I don't know why. It's one of those weird things where Ayn Rand she's connected to like incels or like angry white guys or like finance people that are cruel.
Yeah,
it's this very strange.
Steve Jobs' favorite book, by the way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. But it's one of those things where it's like if you hear that, like, I'm an Ayn Rand fan, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
you're one of those guys.
Yeah.
Are you into Bitcoin too, buddy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's true.
Right?
But it's funny because, look, and I get, by the way, Atlas Shrugged, fair. You can play with that. That's a game that I'm pretty exclusively a Fountainhead fanatic, and for that, also because it's melodrama too. Like it's the most melodramatic thing ever. I mean, as far as just like,
why won't Netflix let you do that?
I
feel
know.
like they should.
I feel like I think it would have a huge. Well, again,
I bet it would
like
work.
I said, I know it would work. I know it would work.
I know it would work too.
I know it would
yeah.
work.
Why don't come on, Netflix? Let's go.
Let's go.
Well, I'm a fan of letting artists like yourself do what is their vision. And I think people are often wrong about whether or not something is going to be successful commercially or whether or not it's going to resonate with a lot of other people.
But that's the thing, like no one knows. Like that's the awesome thing about movies is like, and why, I'm not that worried about the AI influence over motion picture because there's obviously no formula. No one can predict what's going to be successful, or they would have gotten rid of the directors and writers a long time ago. Like it's still, there's alchemy, there's still magic, there's still like an impossible, like, all these elements come together and you're like, you feel something and you're like, what, that was cool. Fuck, and it's a thing like, who knows,
Yeah.
It's like, anything, that you see that maybe if someone described it to you in an abstract, you'd be like, that sounds dumb. Like, I know. And then you sit and you watch it and you experience it moment by moment and you feel it. Yeah. And it's fucking cool.
Well, it's also, I think there's always going to be a thing that people resonate with where they know it's made by a person. They know that an artist's thoughts were involved in the creation of this thing. This is the vision. They worked tirelessly to produce this, and they put it out, and they're proud of it. Here it is. And there's something about that you're getting to take in another human being's, a group of human beings' creation, and that means something to us. And I think it's always going to mean something to us. I think there's going to be AI songs and AI movies and AI art, and it's going to be cool. But it's not going to be as cool because it's not going to be from a human.
Correct.
Or from
and
human beings.
And I do feel like the fingerprints, the squishy fingerprints on the thing are the thing that make it like unbelievably cool.
Chisel marks.
Yeah,
on the
I
statue.
want the chisel marks. I love them. I live for them. Like to me, that's the bit. Like the best movies. My favorite movies, the best movies, are where you can feel the hand of the filmmaker.
Yes.
Like I want that.
Yeah.
I do not want the movie made by committee.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
you vote. When you when you go to a movie that feels like it was made in the boardroom, like
Right.
I feel dirty when I watch that. I don't like it. I'm like, I don't want the cold hand of marketing on me like that. I want to like. That's why I love the, like the weirdness. Like I feel like in the end, all my movies are just a little bit weird in a good way. Like 300 for whatever it's like all the like, kind of like coolness of it as far as like, yeah, let's go fight. It's still a weirdo movie, like
Did
the
you
way
ever
it's
think
made.
of putting a bunch of gay stuff in there?
Well, it's Frank's book. I wrote it. I made what Frank wrote. Now in retrospect, and we've been talking about doing a series where I really wanted to like introduce those concepts a lot more because I just feel like it's important in if we go forward and do like more in the 300 universe, I would want to bring that part in and let people, which I think just shakes it up again. Like you're like, what? Like right when you thought you knew, right when you thought you knew like how to feel, like I'm going to make you feel like another way. People have always said like, 300, people have accused me of being like homophobic or whatever. And
Why?
I'm like, I don't know. They just somehow they feel like that.
Because the Spartans weren't doing gay stuff?
Yeah, or because they, there's that one line where he says, philosophers and boy lovers. But like, I think that he's clearly being cheeky, Leonidas, because like I of course, and was hyper aware at the time that the reality of Spartan culture was like he's obviously out. He means philosophies and boy lovers, not like he's using that maybe as a derogatory comment, but when in reality he's a lover of men, probably.
Absolutely.
And so like I just think that like and we talked about like as we go forward, I would love to like just kind of stress and just like I said, like, look, 300, in some ways is like one of the gayest movies ever made. Like it is incredibly male centric, male obsessed. Like you really feel like very strong male energy from the movie, even though there's a strong lead. Gorgo's an incredibly strong female character, and we wrote her and made her like. He doesn't decide to kick the Persian messenger into the well without getting approval from Gorgo because, he's like, I'm going to burn it down. Is that cool? And she's like, go do it. And he's like, all right, here we go. And, this is Sparta's that guy. And that's like, that was that. And I just think that like, and maybe that was just me understanding doing the research and understanding the reality of Spartan culture that that energy was in there because I just felt like it was important, to make sure that it was, that there was this kind of visceral sexuality to the way the men actually interacted, that was there. I mean, regardless of whether you acknowledge it, it's there,
That would be, but it wasn't acknowledged really in the film. Like if anybody didn't know the history of the Spartans, they wouldn't know.
No. But I just feel I just mean from sort of an iconic standpoint, as far as like the this just sort of indulgence in the male form, is
Right.
it's not casual.
Right. If you, it'd be fascinating to see if you did do a series and you had them behave the way Spartans actually did, the reaction.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think that hopefully we'll find out one day. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like, look, in the end, it's a weirdo show, like it's fun to enjoy it. It's fun to fuck with it, like that's what we do. Like you got to tear it apart a little bit to like take a look at it. You got to know,
When you choose things to do today, how do you go about doing it? Do you just sit with an idea and bring it to studios? Do they come to you? How do you choose what you?
I don't develop. I kind of have a bunch of I've always had a bunch of stuff that I work on, and I just go, I want to do this, and then whoever wants to do it, then we do it. And
That's a nice position to be
in.
It's
an awesome position, and I appreciate it, and I don't take it for granted. There's a few things like I've always been obsessed with. Richard Bach. I don't know if you know, like he has this book called Illusions that I've owned for a long time that I've always wanted to do. I grew up as a Christian Zionist, and I
Isn't that a book about like channeling?
Well, Illusions is about this. It's a book about this guy flying his biplane around in the 1970s, and he lands in a pasture because, like, in the 70s, he was part of this sort of. He would fly his biplane around, land in a pasture, and then sell rides for $3, like for 10 minutes, and that's how he lived. Right, he's just a gypsy pilot flying around the Midwest. And he happens to come across this guy who also is flying a biplane, who happens to be like a messiah, who happens to be like this super spiritually advanced dude who's on the run from, he doesn't want to be the messiah. He's like, it's called Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And it's about the two of them spending a summer together, just the one guy teaching him about, like, it's a shit job being the Messiah. Like, don't do it. Because you know what happens to the Messiahs in the end.
Right. Yeah.
He goes, do you always have to die a violent death? And he goes, yeah, I don't think always. And he's like, really? He goes, yeah, you know what? It's cool for, like, he goes, what about just a quiet little ascension, you know, just on the side? And he's like, yeah, I don't think the universe will let that happen, you know? So it's this really cool, again, it's like this sort of, it's again like a spiritual deconstructivist, like, Messiah story. And I just, like, it was like this book when I was growing up. In a lot of ways, it's religious philosophy. It's similar to Christian Science. So I superimposed my religious beliefs onto this book, and I felt like it kind of spoke to my doubts and my questions about my religious upbringing and, like, what I thought for real. Like, my brother passed away when I was 13. He got in a car accident, and he was like this incredibly spiritual dude. Everyone, like, anyone who knew my brother was like, that guy was the guy. He was the man. Like, you know, Sam Snyder was, like, among his peer group was like, he was like, you know, in retrospect, like, he was into Tai Chi and, like, just, like, super cool 70s dude, right? Like, just, he kind of looked like Billy Crudup, right? Like Billy Crudup from, like, you know, Almost Famous, right? Imagine that guy, like, but just, like, the coolest guy, you know, smoking dope, just being cool as hell. So when he passed away, I always thought, like, okay, my brother just, like, tired of this world and went looking for another one, you know, like, he was just, like, on a spiritual journey. But then, like, when you're 13 and you see, like, what that event, though, does to your family, your mother and father, you know, your sister, all of their friends, like, the devastation that they feel. And these are people that I believed in the religion that I believed in. And the pain, like, it made me really go, like, what the fuck? Like, what's real? Like, what are we supposed to believe? You know, it really tested me. And I think that Illusions, that book, in retrospect, and I won't spoiler alert, I won't tell you what happens on the last page of the book, but it kind of speaks to where I was, and I think so. It's always resonated with me. And I'm friends with Richard Bach. I became friends with him, and his wife is constantly texting me like, "When are we making Illusions?" And I was like, "Soon." She's like, "I found the planes," you know. So it's cool. Like, we have the planes. We can make it any time. So yeah, So those are kind of, that's how we develop. Like, it's all these things that I have, you know, that are kind of close to me, that I'm always constantly saying, what about that? Maybe it's time.
Well, that's awesome, dude. Well, listen, it's been great to talk to you. I really appreciate what you've done. I love how excited you are about filmmaking. And
cheers.
You've done some awesome shit, man. You should be proud.
I appreciate it. Look, man, I'm a fan of the show, and you know, it's an honor to come on and talk to you.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you. Thank you
Cheers.
very much. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, brother.